changing the name of the clinic and just kept going.
Well, I'm sure of that.
And
Actually, they sued him.
And they put right to Kevin's mixer now.
I think I remember something about it, but
They took depositions over the phone like 3 or 4 different times.
Kev, sorry.
And were you the one that put the camera?
I'm on Global Flyer time.
Okay, Kev, you're gonna have to roll this.
they did a 2-camera shoot with
In a room that's about
a veal pit. Oh my God! I'd have never come up with that. That's good.
Yeah, we'll have more minutes.
You know what? 10 minutes ago, I could have told you the name of that doctor.
Yeah, we got it.
Not Hirsch. He was taken out of it, like mentally retarded. He had glaucoma. And we had like an 80-year-old man who had eyes like a shithouse rat. He didn't see eyelashes on his eye. And they tested him that he did it, and they told him, oh boy, just about. Oh, testing Joe.
They're doing it.
Yeah.
Regulatory, yeah. And Red was in on that?
They're pretty big back in the house.
Hold on, I got this one.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, this is my podium.
Yeah.
You got a podium. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am District Attorney Nola Folston, District Attorney for the 18th Judicial District of Kansas. Thank you all for coming to our courthouse here in Wichita, Kansas. Today, in the District Court, charges were filed against Park City resident Lynn Rader. A 10-count complaint and information has been filed in this case, alleging 10 homicides that occurred in our jurisdiction over a series of years. As you might know, this case has ended with the arrest of Mr. Rader, and now the case makes its way to our courthouse. These, ladies and gentlemen, are allegations against an individual, allegations that must be proven in a court of law in this jurisdiction. The prosecutor's offices in this jurisdiction and in all jurisdictions are guided by principles set down by Supreme Court rules, in this state, the rules of the Kansas Supreme Court. They prohibit the release of information other than certain information that can be given to you with regard to the name, basic information about the accused, and other information about the process and steps in this particular case. We are prohibited by law from giving extrajudicial information that might have a tendency to give this individual anything less than those constitutional rights that he is given by the United States government. And it is not our prerogative to try our case on the courthouse steps. But I will give you the opportunity to ask some basic questions. And I know it's always very difficult for reporters who are here to report the news to be stymied, in effect, by asking questions and having someone say to you, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer that." So in any news conference or any media conference, when we are here, it is to enable you to get some brief information about the case. So before I let you ask basic questions, let me tell you a little bit about our community. Wichita is a Midwestern community, a very typical Midwestern community. The Office of the District Attorney, I've been the District Attorney in this jurisdiction since 1989. I have served 4 terms. I'm in my 5th term. I am surrounded by the most competent and qualified prosecutors that anyone could ever ask for. I am assisted during this particular case by some of the most wonderful prosecutors. I have assisting me are my trial staff, Ms. Kim Parker. Kim Parker is the Chief Deputy District Attorney in this jurisdiction, and she is my first in command. I'm also assisted by Deputy District Attorney Kevin O'Connor. Kevin served a term with the United States U.S. Attorney in the terrorism, anti-terrorism, and death penalty unit, and he comes to us from Chicago, and he's made his home here in Kansas. Also assisting me in this trial is an Assistant District Attorney, Aaron Smith. I've chosen the finest prosecutors to work on this case because it requires the very best attorneys and the very most time-consuming projects that this office will be involved with over the next several months and for whatever length of time. Bob Franken.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I was getting ready to come down, I noticed you saying we were waiting for the district attorney, and I said, you know, I better get a move on.
The question I have is not going to endear me to you, and that has to do with the announcement of the arrests that were made on Saturday. In which case, terms like face of evil were used.
Yes.
We have the BTK killer,
Yes.
etc. Hardly heard the word alleged if you heard it.
Yes.
Are you concerned that this is going to be a problem for you, the pre-trial publicity as a prosecutor?
Yeah, Mr. Franken has asked whether or not the terms that were used during the initial news conference were or could be detrimental to this case. I say no, and the reason is that when I am in control of this case and henceforth, there will be no terms of art that will be used. You will note that whenever we talk about this case, we refer to the individual defendant as Mr. Rader. There will be no names that will be used other than the name of the defendant. There will be no commentary from the Office of the District Attorney regarding any other comments other than the allegations brought forth as to this individual, and you will note that the information that comes from the Office of the District Attorney will be the information that will be shared with the public, and that regard is in regard to the status of the proceedings. What individuals may say in this community, what the media may report, is something that the Office of the District Attorney has no control over. That is why we ask members of the media to be responsible in their reporting. Over this past weekend, I've had the occasion to visit with members of the media and to assist in clearing up irresponsible and reporting that has been of individual commentary that has been untrue. And that is something that you're going to have to monitor yourselves. We are not there to assist you, and you're going to have to cover this story in the most important way that you can to assure that the information you're putting out is true and correct.
May
Mr.
I ask
Franken?
a follow-up, please?
Sure.
And that is, I'm not talking about media right now. I'm talking about the comments that were made by police officials on Saturday. And I'm asking if that might be a problem that you're going to have.
I do not believe it will be a problem when we try this case, and I think that over the years there has been much attention drawn to communications that have been brought to the community and the media by an individual on his own accord, and I think that the many things that have been in the public have been brought to the public by an individual himself. And that's all I'm going to address on that. I do not approve anyone's messages, only my own, and I'm only responsible for the things that I say.
What are you comfortable saying about the ongoing reports of confessions?
I can only tell you that I am prohibited from making any commentary in regard to any evidence that might be introduced during the time of trial. And that is, believe me, if it were up to me in my own world, I would love to say, hey, listen, can I tell you a story? But unfortunately, I must rely on the rules that protect the constitutional rights of a defendant that comes before the court on allegations that have been made. We cannot try this case here today in this arena. We have to be able to say whatever happens in this case, we have tried it, and we have tried to try it within that pristine constitutional bubble. And I know that that's impossible, but whatever part I play is going to reflect that we have done our responsible job in making sure that this is being done correctly by the Office of the District Attorney. In releasing information, we can only release information relative to the steps in the proceeding. I can't comment on my personal feelings. My staff will not comment. Our individual attorneys in our office, while briefed, have also been briefed again on the ethical responsibilities that each attorney has. We also brief law enforcement on their ethical responsibilities under Rule 3.8 that requires them to have that same responsibility under the umbrella of the prosecution. And so while you may be able to go to California and get information from some other prosecution agencies, you won't get it here. And I hope you will appreciate the stand that we take. It is for the protection and safety and welfare of this community to try a case that is very important to our community. And while people hunger for information, and while there may be many interests other places, it is unfortunately something that we must contain here to assure that whatever trial occurs, it occurs in the most fair and impartial manner, and that the constitutional rights of Dennis Rader are protected. And until these allegations come to fruition, and until such time as a jury makes these determinations, they will stay within that bubble of a constitutional protection. And so that he receives a fair trial, even though it might be at the expense of someone not getting their fill of information in a stream of video or over the internet.
Did you meet with reporters about the issue of confessions, or was that on another?
I have not discussed this matter with reporters on any issues that might reveal any evidence or any information that may have come forth during the investigation of this matter.
What extent are the victims on your mind?
In this particular case, it is of utmost importance that we reflect on those individuals and their families who have lived over these years with the pain of not knowing, and of community members who have locked and bolted their doors for years with fear that they might be the next individual. No one should assume that this community is immune from further crime. No one should be able to say it will never happen to me, that nothing ever can happen again, because there can be and will be continued crime in this community, and no one is immune from that. You must understand that crime goes on.
No, you said earlier that this case is over, which seems to imply that perhaps there is a convention involved, or that there's something else.
Don't make any assumptions.
What can we take away from your words?
What you can take away from this is that the state has charged Dennis Rader with 10 counts of first-degree murder for a period of years, starting in 1974 and progressing on through those years, and that these allegations will be proved in court by the prosecution. What you can take away from this is that we cannot reveal that information until we go to court. We do have a preliminary hearing scheduled in this case for now March 15th. I would doubt that that would be the date where things would actually happen, because knowing how things occur, it would probably be passed for several weeks. It could go that day, but it would be unlikely. And at the time of the preliminary hearing, evidence may be revealed at that time. So you do have the ability to come and listen at that time and gather information. However, between now and then, there won't be any postings of things to look for, information, etc. We are in the midst of preparing our case, of working through our cases, and will not be available to discuss that evidence until such time as it is presented in court, and then you're free to report what you hear.
Are you concerned if they're because of
I'm
all
sorry,
the
one at
media-
a time.
Are you
Mr. Schwanke.
Are you concerned because of all the
Miss-
media coverage?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you concerned because of all the media coverage about a change of venue that defense attorneys in this case will try to get it to say Shawnee County?
There's always an opportunity for individual attorneys, Mr. Sharon, I'm sorry I got the name wrong. There's always the ability for for legal matters to occur, including a motion for change of venue. However, in some of the most heinous of crimes that we've had, looking back to the Carr case, I believe that our community can draw a potential jury that would be able to sit and listen to this case without being influenced. And that also goes to the amount of media coverage. And we know that the media coverage has been staggering in this case, but it's also been coverage from 30 years hence. So we can expect a number of different legal motions that might come about, but in our opinion, they are defensible, and I believe that the best place to try this case is the community in which that action occurred.
Besides the media coverage, are you concerned because this guy has struck so much fear into people's hearts in the last 30 years that they might be a revenge factor?
I'll have to take that up in court.
How is prosecuting this case?
I'm sorry.
Hi, it's Michelle. How is prosecuting this case affecting your department? How many people are involved in 30 years?
We're a very solid office. The last case that we prosecuted, Ms. Parker and I and Mr. O'Connor, involved a case of 7 homicides that occurred in this jurisdiction. And our office and staff was tremendously capable of handling these kind of cases. We have a staff of approximately 50 attorneys, staff of over 100 individuals, and we are prepared to try large cases. That was a death penalty case, this is not. And our staff is extremely competent in high-profile litigation, as we have done this before. So we are, in fact, Ms. Parker and Mr. O'Connor and I have also go across the United States teaching classes on high-profile litigation. So we are now learning to practice what we preach.
Will there be any more additional charges filed, or is the case closed?
As the case progresses, in the event that there's any evidence brought to our attention that merits our reconsideration of the charges, we will reconsider those charges. At this time, there is no other additional information other than that which is contained in the complaint. Yes, sir.
For those of us who are not from here, at this hearing in a couple of weeks, is that the point at which he will be required to enter a plea?
Subsequent, after the preliminary hearing occurs, the next step is what is called the arraignment. At that time, the individual defendant, after hearing the court's determination as to whether probable cause exists to bind him over for trial, at that point the court holds what is called the arraignment. He is asked to enter his plea.
So at this hearing, he bottom line is he need not say anything or enter a plea at this hearing.
Today's hearing?
No. On March 15th is what I'm asking about.
You just asked, I just answered.
Okay, and what I'm saying then, all right, at what point, how far down the road do you speculate he will be required to respond to the charges?
I just answered that.
No, you said that on upcoming, he is not required.
Let me repeat it again for you. A preliminary hearing is the next stage in the proceedings. At the conclusion and immediately following the preliminary hearing, the court makes a ruling as to whether there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed, and at that time binds the individual over to stand trial. Immediately following, as in immediately following, he says to the defendant, now we're having an arraignment, and then asks him if he wishes to plead guilty or not guilty. That is immediately following. There's no break. It's not set for another date. It happens right then.
Has there ever been a change of venue?
The question is, has there ever been a change of venue? In this jurisdiction, there has not. We do not cut and paste on our complaint and informations.
If evidence does warrant it, what is the procedure for adding additional counts to this?
By an amended complaint and information. At any time prior to the preliminary hearing, you can do it without an amendment, and at the time of the preliminary hearing or subsequent, you have to amend, and there would be additional hearings that you would have, or you would ask the court to allow you to amend. When at the time of the preliminary hearing, you would add additional information.
It's unusual to see an attorney present. That's why Mr. Nay was there when he is not counsel that's been appointed.
Mr. Nay had.
Speak to the microphone, please.
The question was, why was Mr. Nay present? I think you'd have to ask Mr. Nay.
Can you talk a little bit about your history and experience with this case?
I'm sorry.
We couldn't hear any of what you just mentioned.
The question was, why was Mr. Nay there?
Just speak to the front.
Why was Mr. Nay there? And I said, you'd have to ask Mr. Nay. The next question was, what is my experience? I was born in New York as a small...
Rader, case numbers 2005 CR 498. The matter comes on for preliminary hearing. Is the state ready?
Your Honor, the state is ready to proceed.
Is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Would you like our announcements for the record?
Yes, would you please?
The state of Kansas appears by District Attorney Nola Folston and by Chief Deputy District Attorney Kim Parker, by Deputy District Attorney Kevin O'Connor, and by Assistant District Attorney Aaron Smith.
Your Honor, Dennis Rader appears in person and by counsel, Chief Public Defender Steve Osborne, Sarah McKinnon, Assistant Public Defender, and myself, Jama Mitchell, Deputy Public Defender.
All right, does the defendant desire to have a preliminary hearing at this time?
Your Honor, at this time, Mr. Rader will waive his right to a preliminary hearing.
Very well. Mr. Rader, would you please stand? Mr. Rader, I've been told it is your desire to waive your right to a preliminary hearing in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Sir, do you understand if you waive preliminary hearing, you will give up the right you have to require the state to bring witnesses to court to show that there was probable cause to believe 10 counts of murder in the first degree have been committed, and probable cause to believe you committed those felonies.
Yes, sir.
You understand, if you waive preliminary hearing, I would make those probable cause findings, and you would be bound over for arraignment and trial.
Yes, sir.
Having all that in mind, is it your desire to waive preliminary hearing?
Yes, sir.
Very well. Upon waiver of preliminary hearing, I will find there's probable cause to believe 10 counts of murder in the first degree have been committed. And I will find there's probable cause to believe Dennis L. Rader committed those felonies. May we proceed to arraignment at this time?
Your Honor, defense would request a continuance of arraignment to May 3rd.
All right, any objection by the state?
Well, Your Honor, we are prepared to do an arraignment today. If the court is going to grant the request to continue the arraignment, we would ask the court to confirm with the defendant whether or not he wants to continue the arraignment, so we'd have a record of that.
Well, we have an announcement and request from defense counsel. If the arraignment be set over until May 3rd, I will honor that request. The statute provides for such. So I'll set the matter for arraignment on May 3rd, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your Honor, the state also has a motion before you, a motion for endorsement that we had agreed to do at this time.
All right. There is objection to the motion to endorse by the defense.
No, Your Honor.
And I'll sustain the motion to endorse. Anything further at this time?
Not by defense.
Not by the state, Your Honor.
All right. The court is in recess.
May 3rd.
We need to have a chat with him. We really do, you know?
Well, we can let Judge Clark know that we are available for preliminary hearing. Sure. You call downstairs and let her know we're available to handle preliminary hearings.
Hey, Parker.
You would give him a comment. Sure.
Oh, okay.
Steve, could I see counsel?
Thanks. You want to stay?
Just, yeah.
Both.
Take your badge off. No, I don't really see any need for it. How you doing, Dennis? Good. Go ahead and have a seat. Hands might be full down. The microphone is probably on.
Yeah. That's not it.
Please rise.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, at this time, comes on before the court. Case captioned: the State of Kansas Plaintiff versus Dennis L. Rader, Defendant. Case numbers 2005 CR 498. This matter comes on for trial. Is the state ready?
The state's ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Is the bench ready?
Your Honor, at this time, Mr. Rader will waive his right to a jury trial and enter a plea of guilty to all 10 counts.
Okay, we make our appearances before that occurs, Your Honor. Thank you. District Attorney Nolan Colston appears for the state of Kansas with Chief and Deputy District Attorney Kim T. Parker, Deputy District Attorney Kevin O'Connor, and Assistant District Attorney Aaron Smith.
Your Honor, Dennis L. Rader appears in person and by counsel. Chief Public Defender Steve Osborne, Sarah McKinnon, Assistant Public Defender, and Jama Mitchell, Deputy Public Defender.
All right. Mr. Rader, would you please stand with counsel? Sir, I have been advised it is your desire to enter a plea of guilty in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rader, before I can accept your plea, there are certain things I will need to find out from you and about you. I will do this by asking questions of you, sir. Questions which I will need for you to answer out loud. Should I ask you something which you do not understand, please ask me to explain it or repeat it. Should you need to speak to any of your attorneys, please ask me to let you do so, and I will. All right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rader, as I understand it, you are 60 years of age, having been born March 9th, 1945. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? Sir, how much education do you have?
18 years.
Do you have any history of psychological problems, mental disease or disorder, anything that would make it difficult?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Rader, in this case, you are charged by way of information with 10 counts. In count number 1, it is claimed that on or about the 15th day of January 1974, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Joseph Otero, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation and or asphyxiation, inflicting injuries from which the said Joseph Otero did die on or about January 15, 1974. Sir, do you understand you're charged with murder in the first degree, Class A felony in count 1?
Yes, sir.
In count number 2, it is claimed that on or about the 15th day of January 1974 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Julie Otero, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Julie Otero did die on or about January 15th, 1974. You understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count 2.
Yes, Your Honor.
In count 3, it is claimed on or about the 15th day of January 1974 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Josephine Otero, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Josephine Otero did die on or about January 15th, 1974.
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand you're charged with first degree murder, a Class A felony in count 3.
Oh, yes, sir.
Count 4, it's claimed on or about that same day in 1974 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Joseph Otero Jr., maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation and or asphyxiation, inflicting injuries from which the said Joseph Otero Jr. did die on or about January 15, 1974. Sir, do you understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count 4?
Yes, sir.
In count 5, it is claimed on or about the 4th day of April, 1974 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Catherine Bright, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation and stabbing, inflicting injuries from which the said Catherine Bright did die on April 4th, 1974. Do you understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count 5?
Yes, Your Honor.
In count number 6, sir, it is claimed that on or about the 17th day of March, 1977, in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Shirley Vian, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Shirley Vian did die on March 17, 1977. Do you understand that you are charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count number 6?
Yes, Your Honor.
In count 7, it's claimed that on or about the 8th day of December, 1977, in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Nancy Fox, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Nancy Fox did die on December 8th, 1977. Sir, do you understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree in count 7?
Yes, Your Honor.
In count number 8, it is claimed that on or about the 27th day of April, 1985, to the 28th day of April, 1985, in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Maureen Hedge, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Maureen Hedge did die on April 27, 1985. Do you understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count 8?
Yes, sir.
Sir, in count number 9, it is claimed that on or about the 16th day of September, 1986, in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Vicky Wagerly, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Vicky Wagerly did die on September 16, 1986. Do you understand that you're charged with murder in the first degree, a Class A felony in count 9?
Yes, Your Honor.
In count number 10, it is claimed that on or about the 18th day of January 1991 to the 19th day of January 1991 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Dolores E. Davis, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Dolores E. Davis did die on January 19, 1991. You understand that you are charged with murder in the first degree, an off-grid person felony in count number 10.
I would like a correction on that. I've got the 19th on mine. Is that?
I have in the information before me that they claim it occurred on or about the 18th day of January 1991 AD to the 19th day of January 1991.
That'll be okay.
Your Honor, that is a Class A person felony also. That's pre-guidelines, so it would also be a Class A person felony.
All right, I was looking down at the surplusage. It is a Class A person felony. But Mr. Rader, you are satisfied with that time period?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rader, in this case, you are entitled to a trial by jury. The constitutions of the United States and the state of Kansas provide that a person charged with a criminal case is entitled to have a jury of 12 persons, 12 of his peers, decide the case. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
In this case, sir, if there were a jury trial, we would select 12 individuals. These people would listen to the facts involved in the case and make a determination after all of the evidence had been submitted as to whether or not the state had proven your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You would not have to prove a thing. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
If there were a trial, the state would have to bring witnesses to court. Those people would take an oath and have a chair at the witness stand. They would then answer questions asked of them by the state's lawyer. Their answers to those questions would be what is called testimony. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Your attorneys would have the right to question every witness called by the state and in that way confront those people for you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
That also is a constitutional right that you have, the right of confrontation of witnesses called to testify against you. And you realize that?
Yes, sir.
Your attorneys could do that. They could confront the witnesses the state would call at a trial, but they would in no way be obligated to do so because they, just like you, have to prove nothing. The state has to prove that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You do not have to prove that you are not guilty. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
If there were a trial, Mr. Rader, you would have the right to bring witnesses to court for yourself. If those people would not voluntarily come to court, the court would do everything within its power to make them come. Your witnesses could testify just as the state's witnesses testified, and the state would have a right to confront or cross-examine every witness you might call. Do you understand that you would have that absolute right to put on a defense by calling witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
But do you also realize, sir, if there were a trial, you would not have to call any witnesses, nor would you have to put on any defense. The state has to prove that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You do not have to prove that you are not guilty. You understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
If there were a trial, Mr. Rader, you would have the right to testify yourself. You could take the witness stand after taking an oath and answer questions asked of you by your attorneys. The state would then have the right to confront or cross-examine you. You understand that you would have that right, that absolute right to testify in your own defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
But do you also realize, Mr. Rader, that under the constitutions of the state of Kansas and the United States, no one could make you or force you to take that witness stand. because you are protected with what is called the right against self-incrimination. That simply means no one could put you in a position where you could be a witness against yourself. The only way that you would testify at any trial would be if you wanted to. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Sir, if there were a trial, these would be your rights. By entering a plea of guilty to these 10 counts, you will be giving up all of these rights, especially that right against self-incrimination, because you would have to admit here in open court that you did what the state claims you did. You understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, as I understand it, there are no plea negotiations in this case. Is that correct, counsel?
That is correct, Your Honor.
That is correct, Your Honor.
I have been given a defendant's acknowledgement of rights and entry of plea form by the defense. There on that form, there are certain matters contained in paragraph 1. I'm going to read it into the record. Paragraph 1. All right, you may look at it. You may look at it. Have you had the opportunity to read paragraph 1? All right. In paragraph 1, it is written, "My true name is Dennis L. Rader. I am 60 years old and have completed 18 years of education. There have been no plea negotiations in this case, and the defendant hereby enters a plea of guilty as charged to all counts. With respect to count 10 of the complaint, the defendant hereby acknowledges, proffers, and stipulates pursuant to the law of 1990, Chapter 99, Sections 5 and 6. He committed the crime in order to avoid or prevent a lawful arrest or prosecution, and further, he committed the crime in an especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel manner, and the aggravating circumstances outweigh any mitigating circumstances. By doing so, the defendant further waives his right to have a jury of 12 or the court determine whether aggravating circumstances outweigh any mitigating circumstances." Now, this is written in paragraph 1. The defendant has offered to stipulate to those particular items contained therein. The state
will not accept a stipulation as to the hard 40.
All right, this is something we do not really have to deal with until time of sentencing, should we reach that.
We will agree that we will agree to the waiver of the jury, and other than that, we will not agree to the stipulation as to the factual basis for the aggravating factors.
All right, as I indicated, this is something we will approach and get to at the time of sentencing. Mr. Rader, because there is not an acceptance of this paragraph, I'm not going to go into it any further. But I would mention that this defendant's acknowledgement of rights and entry of plea form, I note, has been signed by yourself and your counsel. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Did you have an opportunity to go over this form thoroughly with your lawyers?
Yes, many times.
This form contains many of the same rights that I have advised you of already. Are you basically, based upon the contents of this form and your discussions with your attorneys and what I have told you here today, are you pretty much assured that you understand each and every one of your rights in this case?
Yes, sir. The defense worked with me real well. We went over them, and I feel like I'm pretty happy with it, ready to go.
You have no questions in regards to what your rights are?
No, sir.
In this case, as I've told you, Mr. Rader, if you enter a plea of guilty, you will give up many of these rights that we have gone over, if not all of them. You will also give up your right to appeal much of the material contained within this case. When I say material, appeal the decisions and rulings of the court. You understand that?
Clarification on that.
All right. If you enter a plea of guilty, you would give up many of your appeal rights because you would not be able to appeal, for example, a factual basis. You will have the right, however, to appeal the manner in which the proceedings have been completed and done up to this point in time.
10 days will still be there at the, after sentencing?
That is correct.
Okay.
You also have, in regards to count number 10, an automatic appeal, basically, based upon the law as it was in the state of Kansas at that time, should the court impose a hard 40 sentence. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And your attorneys have talked with you about your appeal rights and what, if anything, you would give up in this regard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So you believe that you fully and completely understand your rights in this case. Now, Mr. Rader, have you talked with your lawyers in regards to sentences?
Yes, there was a, yes, I have talked to him.
All right. The allegations made by the state in the information cover a long period of time. The law of the state of Kansas pretty much remained the same during this period of time. However, there were some changes that occurred in regards to later counts. The law of the state of Kansas, as it became effective in 1969, a publication in 1970 for murder in the first degree, called for a sentence of life with a parole eligibility of 15 years. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, that particular sentence would apply in regards to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
In regards to count number 10, in that particular count, the law was amended to allow for a person who was convicted of first-degree murder under certain circumstances to serve a term of life with a parole eligibility period of 40 years. That means after the person has served 40 years in confinement, they would be eligible for parole. Not that that person would get parole, but that that person would be eligible. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, under that particular sentence, we've had some discussion about it already. The state has the responsibility of bringing evidence to the court, and that evidence could be presented to a jury to show that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances. If that were found beyond a reasonable doubt, then you could be sentenced to life with a parole eligibility of up to 40 years. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Based upon, well, let me mention to you also, in regards to these particular felonies, there were also fines that were in place back at that time. Have you talked with your attorneys about those particular fines?
Yes, we have.
In those cases, the fines, and all of them pretty much, fines could be up to $500,000 for these felonies. You understand that?
Yes.
The court would have the right to impose such fines. Do you realize that?
Yes.
Based upon what you've talked with your attorneys about, what I've talked with you about here this morning, Mr. Rader, do you believe that you fully and completely understand the possible sentences and your rights involved in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
There have been no plea agreements in this case. Has anyone threatened you with anything or forced you in any way to enter a plea of guilty?
No, sir.
Have the services of your lawyers been satisfactory?
Yes, sir.
They've been available to discuss the case with you and confer with you about possible defenses and all of the aspects of the case?
No, they've worked very well with me. I have no problems.
You've had no dissatisfaction with them whatsoever?
No, sir.
Have you any problem with the way the court has treated you?
No, it's been very fair.
All right, Mr. Rader. At this time, I'm going to ask, how do you plead to these 10 counts?
Guilty.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty, or are you pleading guilty for some other reason?
Now, there were some reservations on that, but if we went to trial, I think it would be just a long drawn to a guilty. just a long process. So, you know, it's just a mathematical problem. It's guilty.
All right, are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes,
Or
sir.
All right, well, I'm going to go over each one of these counts. I'm going to ask you for a factual basis for these counts. That simply means, Mr. Rader, I want you to tell me in your own words why you believe you're guilty. We will start off with count number 1.
Your Honor, the one thing that's missing, the explanation of the parole eligibility was that the sentences could be served concurrent or consecutively.
Well, I'll advise you of that too, Mr. Rader. You understand that these sentences could be concurrent or they could be consecutive. The sentences in counts 1 through 10. You
Okay,
understand they could be run concurrently?
This is on the facial?
On all of them.
Yeah.
You understand they could be concurrent or consecutive?
Yes, sir.
When I say concurrent, that would mean if they were all run together, or any number of them together, those sentences that were concurrently run would be served together. If they were ordered to run consecutively, or any number of them ordered to run consecutively, those sentences that were ordered to run consecutively would have to be served one after the other. So if all 10 of these counts were ordered to run consecutively, it would mean that you'd have to serve the sentence for count 1, then the sentence for count 2, then the sentence for count 3, so on until you had satisfied every one of these sentences. And since they are life, basically you would be confined for your natural life. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, I will go ahead at this time then and ask you if the parties don't desire to have anything further on the record. In regards to count 1, please tell me in your own words what you did on the 15th day of January, 1974, here in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that makes you believe you are guilty of murder in the first degree.
On January 15th, 1974, I maliciously, intentionally, and premeditation killed Joseph Otero. Count 2.
All right, Mr. Rader, I need to find out more information. On that particular day, the 15th day of January, 1974, can you tell me where you went to kill Mr. Joseph Otero?
I think it's 1834, Edgemore.
All right. Can you tell me approximately what time of day you went there?
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's, no, that was part of my, I guess my, what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right, so you...
Okay.
You were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see. So you went to this residence, and what occurred then?
Well, I had did some thinking on what I was going to do to either Mrs. Otero or Josephine, and basically broke into the house, or didn't break into the house, but when they came out of the house, I came in and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
All right. Had you planned this beforehand?
To some degree, yes. After I got in the house, I lost control of it, but it was, you know, in the back of my mind, I had some ideas what I was going to do, but I basically panicked that first day, so.
Beforehand, did you know who was there in the house?
I thought Mrs. Otero and the two kids, the two younger kids were in the house. I didn't realize Mr. Otero was going to be there.
All right. How did you get into the house, Mr. Rader?
I came through the back door, cut the phone lines, waited at the back door, had reservations about even going or just walking away, but pretty soon the door opened and I was in.
All right, so the door opened, was it open for you or did something?
I think one of the kids, I think the junior, or not junior, yes, the younger, Joseph opened the door. He probably let the dog out because the dog was in the house at that time.
All right, when you went into the house, what happened then?
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero, and asked him to you know, that I was there to, basically, I was wanted to get the car. I was hungry, food, I was wanted, and asked him to lie down in the living room. And at that time, I realized that wouldn't be a really good idea. So I finally, the dog was a real problem, so I asked Mr. Otero if he could get the dog out. So he had one of the kids put it out. And then I took him back to the bedroom.
You took who back to the bedroom?
The family, to the bedroom. They had 4 members.
All right, what happened then?
At that time, I tied him up.
While still holding him at gunpoint?
Well, in between tying and yes. Yeah.
All right, after you tied them up, what occurred?
Well, they started complaining about being tied up, and I re-loosened the bonds a couple of times. Tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could. Apparently had a cracked rib from a car accident, so I had him put a pillow down for his head. Had he put a, I think he's Parker or a coat underneath him. They, you know, they talked to me about, you know, giving the car and whatever money. I guess they didn't have very much money. And there I realized that, you know, I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me, and made a decision to go ahead and put him down, I guess, or strangle him.
All right, what did you do to Joseph Otero Sr.?
Joseph Otero?
Yeah,
Okay.
Joseph Otero Sr., Mr. Otero, the father.
I put a plastic bag over his head and then some cords and tightened it.
This was in the bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Did he in fact suffocate and die as a result of this?
Not right away. No, sir, he didn't.
What happened?
Well, after that, I did Mrs. Otero. I had never strangled anyone before, so I really didn't know how much pressure you had to put on a person or how long it would take. But
was she also tied up there in the
yes,
bedroom?
yeah, both her hands and their feet were tied up. She was on the bed.
Where were the children?
Well, Josephine was on the bed, and Junior was on the floor at this time.
So we're talking first of all about Joseph Otero. So you'd put the bag over his head and tied it, and he did not die right away. Can you tell me what happened in regards to Joseph Otero?
He moved over real quick like, and I think tore a hole in the bag, and I could tell that he was having some problems there. But at that time, the whole family just went, they went panicked on me, so I worked pretty quick. I got
What did
Mrs.
you worked pretty quick.
Well,
What
I mean,
did you do?
I strangled Mrs. Otero, and she went out, or passed out. I thought she was dead. She passed out. Then I strangled Josephine. She passed out, or I thought she was dead. And then I went over and put a bag on Junior's head, and then if I remember right, Mrs. Otero came back. She came back and...
Sir, let me ask you about Joseph Otero Sr. You
Senior?
indicated he had torn a hole in the bag. And what did you do with him then?
I put another bag over it, or either that or if I recollect, I think I put either a cloth or a T-shirt or something over his head, and then another bag, and then tighten it down.
Did he subsequently die?
Well, yes. I didn't just stay there and watch him. I mean, I was moving around the room, but.
All right, so you indicated you strangled Mrs. Otero after you had done this, is that correct?
Yeah, I went back and strangled her again, and that finally killed her at that time.
So this is in regards to count 2. You had first of all put the bag over Joseph Otero's head, and he tore a hole in the bag. Then you went ahead. Did you strangle Mrs. Otero then, or did you go
First
back?
of all, Mr. Otero was strangled, or a bag put over his head and strangled. Then I thought he was going down, and I went over and strangled Mrs. Otero. I thought she was down. Then I strangled Josephine, thought she was down, and then I went over to Junior and put the bag on his head. After that, Mrs. Otero woke back up, and you know, she was pretty upset in what's going on. So I came back and at that point in time, strangled her for a death strangle at that time.
With your hands or what?
No, with a cord, with a rope. And then I think at that point in time, I redid Mr. Otero, put the bag over his head, went over and then took Junior. Before that, she asked me to save her son, so I actually had taken the bag off, and then I was really upset at that point in time. So basically, when Mr. Otero was down, Mrs. Otero was down, I went ahead and took Junior. I put it in the bag over his head and took him to the other bedroom at that time.
What did you do then?
Put a bag over his head. I put a cloth over his head, a T-shirt, and a bag so he couldn't tear a hole in it. And he subsequently died from that. And then when I went back, Josephine had woke back up.
What did you do then?
And I took her to the basement and eventually hung her.
All right, you hung her in the basement?
Yes, sir.
All right, did you do anything else at that time?
Yes, I had some sexual fantasies. But that was after she was hung.
All right. What did you do then?
Went through the house, kind of cleaned it up. It's called the right-hand rule. You go from room to room. Picked everything up. I think I took Mr. Otero's watch. I guess I took a radio. I'd forgot about that, but apparently I took a radio.
Why did you take these things?
I don't know. I have no idea. Just...
What happened then?
I got the keys to the car. In fact, I had the keys, I think, earlier before that because I wanted to make sure I had a way of getting out of the house. And clean the house up a little bit, make sure everything's packed up, and left through the front door. And went over to their car, and then drove over to Dillon's, and left the car there. And then eventually walked back to my car.
All right. Now, sir, from what you have just said, I take it that the facts you've told me apply to both counts all of counts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Rader.
Yes. One thing needs to be corrected on that record, and that is originally, I believe, he indicated 1834 Edgemore. The address was actually 803 Edgemore.
All right, but I'd ask him if it occurred in Sedgwick County. He indicated what had happened. I don't believe the exact address is important. All right, Mr. Rader, we will now turn to count 5. In that count, it is claimed that on or about the 4th day of April, 1974, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Catherine Bright, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation and stabbing, inflicting injuries from which she did die on April 4th, 1974. Can you tell me what occurred on that day?
I don't know how to exactly say that. I had many, what I call them projects. They were different people in the town that I followed, watched. Kathleen Bright was one of the next targets, I guess, as I would indicate.
How did you select her?
Just driving by one day, and I saw her go in the house with somebody else, and I thought that's a possibility. There was many places in the area, College Hill, they're all over Wichita, but anyway, it just was basically a selection process, work toward it. If it didn't work, I just move on to something else. But my kind of person, stalking and strolling, you go through the trolling stage and then a stalking stage. She was in the stalking stage when this happened.
All right, sir, so you identified Catherine Bright as a potential victim.
Yes, sir.
What did you do here in Sedgwick County then?
Pardon?
What did you do then here in Sedgwick County?
On this particular day,
yes.
I broke into the house and waited for her to come home.
How did you break into the house?
Through the back door on the east side.
All right, and you waited for her to come home. Where did you wait?
In the house there, probably close to the bedroom. I walked to the house and kind of figured out where I'd be if they came through.
All right. What happened then?
She and Kevin Bright came in. I wasn't expecting him to be there. And come find out, I guess they were related. That time I approached them and told them I was wanted in California. needed some car. Basically the same thing that I told the Oteros. Kind of ease them, make them feel better, and proceeded to. I think I had him tie her up first, and then I tied him up, or vice versa. I don't remember right now. At that time.
Let me ask, you indicated you had some items to tie these people with. Did you bring these items, both the Oteros and to this location?
The Oteros I did. I'm not really sure on the Brights. There was some, when I ended working with the police, there was some controversy on that. Probably more likely I did, but if I had brought my stuff and used my stuff, Kevin would probably be dead today. I'm not bragging on that, it's just a matter of fact. It's the bonds I tied him up with that he broke them, so. And that,
all right.
And maybe same way with Catherine. It got out of hand.
All right, now you indicated that you believe you had Kevin tie Catherine up. Tell me what happened then.
Okay, I moved, well, after, I really can't remember, Judge, whether I had her tie him up or she tied him up, but anyway, I moved her to another bedroom, and he was already secure there by the bed. I tied his feet to the bedpost, at the bottom of the bedpost, so he couldn't run. Kind of tied her in the other bedroom, and then I came back to strangle him. And at that time, we had a fight.
Were you armed with a handgun at that time also?
Yes, I had a handgun.
What happened when you came back?
I actually had two handguns. Well, when I started strangling, either the barrett broke or he broke his bonds, and he jumped up real quick like. I pulled my gun and quickly shot at him. I hit him in the head. He fell over. I could see the blood, and as far as I was concerned, I thought he was down and was out, and then went and started to strangle Catherine. And then we started fighting because bonds weren't very good, and so back and forth we fought.
You and Catherine?
Yeah, we fought. And I got the best of her, and I thought she was going down, and then I could hear some movement in the other room. So I went back, and Kevin, no, I thought she was going down, and I went back to the other bedroom where Kevin was at, and I tried to re-strangle him at that time, and he jumped up, and we fought, and he at that time shot me because he got my pistol that was in my shoulder here. I had my Magnum in my shoulder, so
shoulder holster? Did you have it in a shoulder holster?
Yes, and I had the Magnum in my shoulder holster. The other one was a .22. And we fought at that point in time, and I thought it was going to go off. I jammed the gun, stuck my finger in there, jammed it, and I think he thought that was the only gun I had, because once I either bit his finger or hit him or something got away, and I used the .22 and shot him one more time, and I thought he was down for good that time.
All right, so you shot him a second time?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Went back to finish the job on Catherine, and she was fighting, and at that point in time I'd been fighting her, and then I heard I don't know whether I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her, and I used a knife on her.
You say you used a knife on her.
Yes.
What did you do with the knife?
I stabbed her. She said either stabbed 2 or 3 times, either here or here. Maybe 2 back here and 1 here, or maybe just 2 times back here.
You were pointing to your lower back and your
yeah, underneath the ribs.
And your lower abdomen?
Yeah, underneath the ribs, up underneath the ribs.
So after you stabbed her, what happened?
Actually, I think at that point in time, well, it was a total mess because I didn't have control on it. She was bleeding. She went down. I think I just went back to check on Kevin, or at that basically same time I heard him escape. It could be one of the two. But all of a sudden the front door of the house was open and he was gone. And I tell you what I thought. I thought the police were coming at that time. I heard the door open. I thought, no, that's it. And I stepped out there, and I could see him running down the street. So I quickly cleaned up everything that I could and left.
All right, now, Mr. Rader, you indicated that at the Oteros you did not have a mask on. Did you have a mask on at the Brights?
No, I didn't.
All right, so what happened then?
I had already had the keys to the cars, and and I thought I had the right key to the right car. I ran out to their car, and I think it was a pickup out there, and I tried it, didn't work, and at that point in time, he was gone, running down the street. I thought, yeah, I'm in trouble. So I tried it, didn't work, so I just took off, ran, I went east, and then worked back toward the WSU campus where my car was parked.
All right, so you had parked your car at the Wichita State University
Yes, sir,
campus?
on the campus,
How far away was the Brights residence?
Oh, I parked, was that 13th? And let's see, they were on 13th. Was it 17th? Yeah. I was just about 1 block south of 17th where the car was. There's a park there. I parked by that park, and then I walked to 13th to the Brights residence. So I basically ran back.
All right, so you were able to get to your car and get away.
Yes, sir.
Now let's turn to count number 6. In that count, they claim on March 17th, 1977, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Shirley Vian maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which she did die on March 17th, 1977. Can you tell me what you did on that day?
As before, Vian was actually on that one, she was completely random. There was actually someone across from Dillon's was a potential target. It was called Project Green, I think. I had project numbers assigned to it. And that particular day, I drove to Dillon's, parked in the parking lot, watched this particular residence, and then got out of the car and walked over to it. It's probably the police report, the address. I don't remember the address now. Knocked, nobody answered it. So I was all keyed up, so I just started going through the neighborhood. I'd been through the neighborhood before. I kind of knew a little of the layout of the neighborhood. I've been through the back alleys, knew where some certain people lived. While I was walking down Hydraulic, I met a young boy and asked him if he ID some pictures. Kind of was a Russ, I guess, or Roos, as you call it, and kind of feel it out. And I saw where he went, and I went to another address and knocked on the door. Nobody opened the door, so I just noticed where he went and went to that house, and we went from there.
Now, you call these projects, were these sexual fantasies also?
Potential hits. Yeah, in my world, that's what I call them.
All right. So
they were called projects, hits.
All right, and why did you have these potential hits? Was this to gratify some sexual interest? Or?
Yes, sir. I had a lot of them, so it's just, if one didn't work out, I just moved to another one.
All right. So, as I'm to understand it, then on the 17th of March, 1977, you saw this little boy go into a residence, and you tried another residence. No one was there. You tried another residence. No one was there, so you went to the residence with the little boy.
Yeah, and I watched where he went.
What happened then?
After I tried this one residence, nobody came to the door. I went to this house where he went in, knocked on the door, and told him I was a private detective. Showed him a picture that I had just showed the boy, and asked him if they could ID the picture. And at that time, I had the gun here, and I just kind of forced myself in. I just walked in, just opened the door, walked in, and then pulled a pistol.
What gun? What pistol?
357 Magnum.
So you only had one gun with you this time?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told Mrs. Vian that I had a problem with sexual fantasies, that I was going to tie her up, and that I might have to tie the kids up, and if she would cooperate with me at that time. We went back. She was extremely nervous. I think she even smoked a cigarette, and we went back to one of the back areas of the porch, explained to her that I had done this before, and I think at that point in time, I think she was sick because she had her night robe on, and I think if I remember right, she had been sick, and I think she came out of the bedroom when I went in the house. So anyway, we went back to her bedroom, and I proceeded to tie the kids up, and they started crying and got real upset. So I said, no, this is not going to work. So we moved them to the bathroom. She helped me, and then I tied the door shut. We put some toys and blankets and odds and ends in there for the kids, make them as comfortable as we could. We tied one of the bathroom doors shut so they couldn't open it, and she went back and helped me shove the bed up against the other bathroom door. And then I proceeded to tie her up. She got sick, threw up, got her a glass of water, comforted her a little bit, and then I went ahead and tied her up, and then put a bag over her head and strangled her.
All right. Was this a plastic bag also?
Yes, sir. I think it was, but I could be wrong on that.
You put a
But
bag.
it was something. I'm sure it was a plastic bag. Yeah.
You say you put a bag over her head and strangled her. What did you strangle her with?
I think on that I had tied her legs to the bedpost and worked up with the rope all the way up, and then what I had left over I looped over her neck.
All right, so you used this rope to strangle her.
Yes, I think it's the same one that I tied her body with.
What happened then?
Well, the kids were really banging on the door, hollering, screaming, and then the telephone rang, and they had talked about earlier that the neighbor was going to check on them, so I cleaned everything up real quick like and got out of there, left, and went back into my car.
Now, when you say you cleaned everything
Well, I
up,
mean, put my stuff, I had a briefcase, whatever I had laying around, the ropes, tape, cords, I threw that in there, whatever, that I had that I brought in the house.
had you brought that to the Bright residence also?
Now, there is I think there's some basic stuff, but I don't remember bringing total stuff like I did to some of the others.
Was this a kit that you had prepared?
Yeah,
beforehand?
Yes, I called my hit kit.
All right, sir. You left the Vian residence, and had you parked your vehicle near
Yeah,
there?
still in the same parking lot there at Dillon's, at Hydraulic and, what is that? Harry? Lincoln and Hydraulic.
All right, in count 7, it is claimed that on the 8th day of December 1977 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed a human being, that being Nancy Fox, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Nancy Fox did die on December 8th, 1977. Can you tell me what you did on that day here in Sedgwick County?
Nancy Fox was another one of the projects. When I was trolling the area, I noticed her go in the house one night. Anyway, I put her down as a potential victim.
Now, let me ask you one thing, Mr. Rader. You've used that term when you were patrolling the area. What do you mean by that?
It's called stalking or trolling.
So you were not working in any form or fashion? You were just...
I don't know, if you read much about serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases. That's one of the phases they go through as a trolling stage. Basically, you're looking for a victim at that time. And that you could be trolling for months or years. But once you lock in on a certain person, then you become stalking. And that might be several of them, but you really home in on that person. They basically become that's the victim, or that's what you want to be.
He said trollers with a T, not a troller.
He did say trolling. I thought he said trolling.
Oh, okay.
All right.
No, I wasn't working, sir.
All right.
No, this was off my hours.
All right, so you basically identified Nancy Fox as one of your projects. What happened then?
At first, she was spotted, and then I did a little homework. I dropped by once to check the mailbox to see what her name was, found out where she worked, stopped by there once at Hillsburg, kind of sized her up. The more I knew about a person, the more I felt comfortable with it. So I did that a couple of times. And then I just selected a night, which was this particular night, to try it, and it worked out.
All right. Can you tell me what you did on the night of December 8th, 1977?
Now, about 2 or 3 blocks away, I parked my car and walked to that residence. Knocked at the door first to make sure, see if anybody was in there, because I knew she arrived home at a particular time from where she worked. Nobody answered the door, so I went around to the back of the house, cut the phone lines. I could tell that there wasn't anybody in the north apartment. Broke in and waited for her to come home in the kitchen.
All right. Did she come home?
Yes, she did.
What happened?
I confronted her, told her there I had a problem, sexual problem, that I would have to tie her up and have sex with her. She was a little upset. We talked for a while. She smoked a cigarette. While we smoked a cigarette, I went through her purse, identifying some stuff. And she finally said, well, let's get this over with so I can go call the police. And I said, okay. And she said, can I go to the bathroom? I said, yes. She went to the bathroom and I told her when she came out to make sure that she was undressed. And when she came out, I handcuffed her and don't really remember whether. Sir?
You handcuffed her, you had a pair of handcuffs?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Well, anyway, I handcuffed her, had her lay on the bed, and then I tied her feet, and then I was also undressed to a certain degree, and then I got on top of her, and then I reached over, took either her feet were tied or not tied. But anyway, I think I had a belt. I took the belt and then strangled her with a belt at that time.
All right, after you had strangled her, what happened then?
Okay. After I strangled her with the belt, I took the belt off and retied that with pantyhose real tight, removed the handcuffs, and tied those with pantyhose. Can't remember the colors right now. I think I maybe retied her feet, or if they hadn't already. They were probably already tied, her feet were. And at that time, masturbated, sir.
Had you had sexual relations with her before?
No. I told her I was, but I did not.
So you masturbated, then what did you do?
Dressed and then went through the house, took some of her personal items and kind of cleaned the house up, went through it, checked everything, and then left.
All right. He's established it was in Sedgwick County. I don't know the exact address. For purposes of this, it's in Sedgwick County. Do you remember the address, Mr. Rader?
Do you remember the address? This box, he's asking.
Oh, box? 913 or 903? No, I sure don't. I know it was on Persian, South Pershing. That's all. I don't.
You're in Wichita?
It was 9 something, sir, but I don't know the other digits.
It's 843.
And,
The address, as I said, is really not important as long as you remember it happened here in Wichita, Sedgwick County.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, let's turn to count 8. In count 8, it is claimed that on or about the 27th day of April 1985 to the 28th day of April 1985 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, it is claimed that you unlawfully killed a human being, Maureen Hedge, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which Maureen Hedge did die on April 27, 1985. Can you tell me what occurred on that day?
well, actually, kind of like the others, she was chosen. I went through the different phases, stalking phase, and since she lived down the street from me, I could watch the coming and going quite easily. On that particular date, I had another commitment. I came back from that commitment, parked my car over at Woodlawn and 21st Street at Bowling Alley there at that time. Before that, I dressed until I had some other clothes on. I changed clothes. I went to the bowling alley, went in there, the precincts of bowling, called a taxi, had a taxi take me out to Park City, had my kit with me, there's a bowling bag.
All right, that was Park City in Sedgwick County,
Yes,
Kansas?
sir. Uh-huh.
All right, you had the taxi take you to Park City. What happened then?
There, I pretended that I was a little drunk. I just took some beer and forced it around my mouth, and the guy could probably smell the alcohol on me. I told him to let me out so I could get some fresh air, and I walked from where the taxi let me off over to her house.
All right, where does she live?
62, 42, 54, 6254, 6254, North Independence.
All right, when you walked over there, what happened next?
Well, as before, I was going to have sexual fantasies, so I brought my hit kit, and lo and behold, her car was there. I thought, gee, she's not supposed to be home. So I very carefully snuck into the house, kind of like a cat burglar, and after checking the house, she wasn't there. So about that time, the doors rattled, so I went back to one of the bedrooms and hid back there in one of the bedrooms. She came in with a male visitor, They were there for maybe an hour or so. He left. I waited till wee hours in the morning, and then proceeded to sneak into her bedroom and flip the lights on what looked like, or I think the bathroom lights. I didn't want to flip her lights on, and she screamed, and I jumped on the bed and strangled her manually.
All right. Now, were you wearing any kind of disguise or mask at this time?
No, no.
You indicated this woman lived down the street from you. Did she know you?
Casually, we'd walk by and wave. She liked to work in her yard as well as I liked to work. It's just a neighborly type thing. It wasn't anything personal. I mean, just a neighbor.
All right, so she was in her bed when you turned on the lights in the bathroom?
Yeah, the bathroom, yeah, so I could get some light in there.
All right, what did you do then?
No, I manually strangled her when she started to scream.
So you used your hands?
Yes, sir.
And you strangled her? Did she die?
Yes.
All right, what did you do then?
After that, since I was in the sexual fantasy, I went ahead and stripped her, and probably went ahead and, I'm not sure if I tied her up at that point in time, but anyway, she was nude, and I put her on a blanket, went through her purse, some personal items in the house, figured out how I was going to get her out of there. Eventually moved her to the trunk of the car. Took the car over to Christ Lutheran Church. This is with the older church, and took some pictures of her.
All right, you took some photographs of her. What kind of camera did you use?
Poor Lord.
Did you keep those photographs?
Yes, the police probably have them.
All right, what happened there?
That was it. She went through, I tied it, she was already dead, so I took pictures of her in different forms of bondage, and that's probably what got me in trouble was the bondage thing. So anyway, that's probably the main thing. But anyway, after that, I moved her back out to the car, and then we went east on 53rd.
All right, what occurred then?
Sir?
What happened then?
Trying to find a place to hide her, hide the body.
Did you find a place?
Yes, yes I did.
Where?
Couldn't tell you without looking at a map, but it was on 53rd, between Greenwich maybe, what's the other one between Greenwich, Rock? Webb. I think between Webb and Greenwich, I found a ditch, a low place on the north side of the road, and hit her there.
All right, you say you hit her there?
Well, there were some trees, some brush, and I laid that over the top of her body.
All right, so you removed the body from the car, put her in the ditch, and then laid some brush over the body?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sir, in count 9, it is claimed on or about the 16th day of September 1986 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed a human being, Vicki Wegerly, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Vicki Wegerly did die on September 16th, 1986. Can you tell me what you did here in Sedgwick County on that day that makes you believe you are guilty?
Yes. Again, Vicki Wegerly was another potential victim. I went through those different phases, locked in on her, as I would call it, and decided that I would try that date. I used Roos as a telephone repairman to get in their house. Drove there in my own personal car around lunchtime, during lunch hour, or approximately that time. It was earlier in the morning than that. And I actually went somewhere else and changed my clothes, what I call my hit clothes. And,
hit clothes?
Hit clothes. Basically different, things that I'd need to get rid of later. Not the same kind of clothes I had on. I don't know what other better word to use it, crime clothes or hit clothes. I just call them hit clothes. Anyway, I walked from my car as a telephone repairman. As I walked there, I donned the telephone helmet. I had a briefcase. Went to one other address just to kind of size up the house. I'd walked by it a couple of times, but I wanted to check it a little bit more. As I approached it, I could hear a piano sound. And went to this other door, knocked on them, and told them that we were recently working on telephone repairs in the area. And they went to her and knocked on the door and asked her if I could come check her telephone lines inside.
Did she allow you in?
Yes, she did.
What happened then?
Went over and found out where the telephone was, simulated that I was checking the telephone. I had a make-believe instrument, and after she was looking away, I drew a pistol at her and asked her if she'd go back to the bedroom with me.
Is this the same .357 Magnum you'd used?
No,
earlier?
this was a different one.
Different pistol. All right, you asked her to go back to the bedroom with you after drawing a pistol on her.
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told her, we went back to the bedroom, I told her I was going to have to tie her up. She was very upset, and I think I used some material that was in, and that's another thing, I'm not sure, but I think I used the material that they had in their bedroom, and after I tied her hands, she broke that and we started fighting. And we fought quite a bit, back and forth.
All right, she was physically fighting you?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Finally got the hand on her and got a nylon sock and started strangling her.
So you wrapped the stocking around her neck?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
I finally gained on her and put her down, and I thought she was dead, but apparently she wasn't. But after she was down and not moving anymore, I rearranged her clothes a little bit and took some quick photos. I think 3 of them, if I remember. And then after that, there was a lot of commotion. She had mentioned something about her husband coming home, so I got out there pretty quick. The dogs were raising a lot of cane in the back. The doors and the windows were all open to the house. There was a lot of noise when we were fighting, so I left pretty quickly after that. Put everything in the briefcase and had her. I'd already gone through her purse and got the keys to the car and used their car for my getaway car.
All right, now you indicate that you thought that she was dead. Did you discover later that she was not dead?
Yes, I guess the paramedics arrived and they tried to attempt to revive her, and that failed. I don't know whether she died there or on the way to the hospital or at the hospital. I don't recollect.
But you later found out that she did die as a result of your strangulation?
Yes.
Now, sir, let's turn to count 10. In that count, it's claimed that on or about the 18th day of January 1991 to the 19th day of January 1991 in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Dolores E. Davis, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Dolores E. Davis did die on January 19th, 1991. Mr. Rader, please tell me what you did here in Sedgwick County, Kansas on that day that makes you believe you're guilty.
That particular day I had some commitments. I left those, went to one place, changed my clothes, went to another place, parked my car, finally made arrangements on my hip kit, my clothes, and then walked to that residence. After spending some time at that residence, it was very cold at night. Had reservations about going in. I had cased the place before, and I really couldn't figure out how to get in, and she was in the house, so I finally just selected a concrete block and threw it through the plate glass window on the east and came on in.
All right, where is this residence located?
It's on Hillside, but I couldn't give the address. I know it's probably 61, probably 62 something. Oh, 62 something.
North or south?
North Hillside.
All right, so you used a concrete block to break a window?
Mm-hmm. Plate glass window, patio door. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Noise. I just went in. She came out of the bedroom and thought that a car had hit her house, and I told her that I used the roofs of being wanted. I was on the run. I needed food, car, warm up, and I asked her. I handcuffed her and kind of talked to her. Told her that I would like to get some food, get her keys to her car, and kind of rest assured, talk with her a little bit and calmed her down a little bit. And then eventually I checked, I think she was still handcuffed. I went back and checked out where the car was, stimulated getting some food, odds and ends in the house that I was leaving. Then went back and removed her handcuffs and then tied her up. And then eventually strangled her.
Or you say eventually strangled her?
Well, after I tied her up, I went through some things in the room there and then strangled her.
You say you went through, were you looking for something?
Mm-hmm. Well, some personal items, yes. I took some personal items from there.
Did you take personal items in every one of these incidents?
I did on the hedge. I don't remember anything of Vicky's place. The Oteros, we got the watch and the radio. I don't think I did any Brights. Vians, no, I don't think so. Fox, yes, I took some things from Fox. It was hit and miss.
All right, but
Probably if it was a control situation where I had more time, I took something, but if it was a confusion and other things, I didn't, because I was trying to get out of there.
All right, so in regard to the Davis matter, you went around the room, took a few personal things. What did you do then?
Strangled her.
What did you strangle her with?
Pantyhose.
All right, what happened then? Did she
I
die?
kind of like Mrs. Hedge. I already figured out I had a plan on leaving, and put her in a blanket and drug her to the car and put her in the trunk of the car.
So you were able to strangle her to death with these pantyhose?
Yes, sir.
All right, you put her in your car?
In her
or
car.
In the car?
Her car. The trunk of her car.
What happened then?
I really had a commitment I needed to go to, so I moved her to one spot, took her out of her car. This gets complicated. Then the stuff I had, clothes, gun, whatever, I took that to another spot in her car, dumped that off. Okay. Then took her car back to her house, left that, let me think now. Okay. In the interim, I took her car back to her house. In the interim, I realized that I had lost one of my guns. I dropped it somewhere. So we started trying to figure out where my gun was. So I went back in the house, realized I had dropped it when I broke the plate glass window. It dropped and fell on the floor right there, and I found it right there. So that solved that problem. Anyway, I went back out, threw the keys, checked the car real quick, and threw the keys up on top of the roof of her house, walked from her car back to my car, took my car, drove it back, and I either dropped more stuff off or I picked her up and put them in my car. And then I drove up northeast of Sedgwick County and dropped her off underneath the bridge.
So all of these incidents, these 10 counts, occurred because you wanted to satisfy a sexual fantasy, is that correct?
Yes.
Does any party desire any further matters be put on the record at this time?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may be seated, Mr. Rader. I will find that you, Dennis L. Rader, have knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily waived your constitutional rights and entered your pleas of guilty. I will find that you understand the nature of the charges and the consequences of your pleas. Based upon your statements to the court, I will find there are factual bases for each of these pleas of guilty. I will accept these pleas of guilty and adjudge you, Dennis L. Rader, guilty of murder in the first degree in count 1, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 2, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 3, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 4, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 5, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 6, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 7, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 8, a Class A felony, murder in the first degree in count 9, a Class A felony, and murder in the first degree in count 10, a Class A felony. I will, at this time, order pre-sentence investigation. I will schedule sentencing on counts 1 through 9 for August 17th at 9 o'clock in the morning. Or did, let me set 9:09 for 1:30. I'll do it at 9 o'clock in the morning. In regards to count number 10, we will schedule a hearing relative to the hard 40 matter at that time. Now, it's my understanding the state, do you desire to present evidence to a jury?
No, Your Honor, I believe that it was mentioned earlier in acknowledgement of rights and entry of plea, that the defendant is waiving his right to a jury trial on the question of sentence as it relates to the hard 40 on count 10. We would ask the court to have the defendant affirmatively waive that right now. That's the only stipulation that we'll accept. We will not accept the stipulation to the existence of the aggravating factors. We wish to present evidence in support of those aggravating factors.
All right, well, Mr. Osborne, do you desire to, on Mr. Rader's behalf, does he desire to accept that portion of the stipulation and waive his right to a jury trial in regards to sentencing on count 10?
We will affirmatively waive his right to a jury trial regarding those sentencing factors, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Rader, your lawyer has indicated to the court it's your desire to give up your right to a trial by jury in regards to count 10, the sentencing aspect of it. Is that your desire?
Yes, sir.
Now, sir, you understand that based upon the law of the state of Kansas, you have the right to have a jury of 12 determine whether the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances, and therefore whether or not a sentence of life with a parole eligibility of 40 years should be imposed. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
You understand without the jury's presence, the court would have to make that determination. Do you realize that?
Yes, sir.
So you would give up the right you would have to require that be proven to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And it would have to be proven to the court beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So having all of that in mind, is it your desire to give up your right to a jury trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, I'll accept that waiver, and I'll set that count 10 for a sentencing hearing on the 17th of August at 9 o'clock in the morning. Anything further on the record at this time?
Nothing by the state, Your Honor, although we do intend to produce some evidence at the sentencing hearing with regard to the sentencing procedure.
Anything further?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Very well, the court will be in recess. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, we are back on the record in State versus Rader. The state may call their next witness.
The state calls Detective Kelly Otis.
I do.
Your Honor, if you will endure for a moment, we're having another technical difficulty.
Newfangled pieces of equipment.
I thought it happened when I started examining witnesses.
No, ma'am.
Please state your name for our court record.
My name is Kelly Otis.
All right. And you are a detective with the Wichita Police Department,
I am.
and you were assigned to be involved with the cold case investigation and review of the Vicki Wegerly matter.
Yes.
And what was the date of her death?
September 16th of 1986.
Okay. Go ahead to the next picture. Now, how long have you worked as a detective with the Wichita Police Department?
I've been a detective since 1995.
And prior to that time, you were first employed as an officer, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So when did you start that process?
1985.
And you are currently assigned to work homicide cases?
Yes.
And how long have you worked in that capacity?
1997.
And when were you assigned to be part of the BTK task force that investigated and did the cold case review that we have been speaking of here today?
March of 2004.
In becoming the detective who was responsible for the Vicki Wegerly murder evaluation and review, did you have an occasion to, of course, learn where she was murdered?
Yes.
And where was that?
At her residence at 2404 West 13th here in Wichita.
Thank you. There is a photograph behind you that shows the front of that address. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is also a photograph that was taken at the time that police were called to that home.
Yes.
All right. Can you just briefly describe for us how it is that police did come to be at that home?
On the morning of September 16th, 1986, Bill Wegerly, Vicki's husband, came home from lunch. About 10 till 11 that morning. When he arrived home, he found their 2-year-old son in the living room area of the house, unattended. Mr. Wegerly found that to be unusual because, as he would say later, that was not one of his wife's normal practices, or actually any practice, to leave the son home alone. Mr. Wegerly quickly walked through the house, didn't find her, noticed that her car was gone when he pulled up at home, and assumed at that point that maybe she had to run a quick errand or run to school to do something for their daughter, who was attending school at the time. Mr. Wegerly had a lunch break and had to return to work. He waited for quite some time, up to approximately 45 minutes to an hour, waiting for his wife to get home, becoming more and more concerned about why she would leave the young man home alone, the boy. Finally, he walked into the bedroom, which he had walked by before but had not gone into, and found his wife's body in the bedroom on the floor. He then called 911.
And EMS responded, is that correct?
Yes.
And actually part of that team, one of those team members who you didn't know at that time, but is your wife currently, is that correct?
That is correct.
Netta Sauer Otis?
Yes.
All right, so she is one of the team members that actually, as we've seen on television, was bringing out Vicki Wegerle at that time.
That's correct.
So you have also a personal association with this case and concern about it in terms of having some knowledge even before you were assigned to this task
That is
force.
correct.
All right. Now, in the follow-up review of this as a cold case, something that's already been discussed, once Rader was arrested, each individual detective who was assigned a particular case had the occasion and opportunity to talk to them about the specifics of their case because they were familiar with that case.
Yes,
And you did that with Rader.
I did.
All right. And in that, were you interested in finding out from him how it is that he selected Vicki Wegerle?
I was.
Tell us what he told you.
Rader said that he picked Miss Wegerle as a victim, a future victim, simply one day when he was driving by their house and saw Vicki walk outside and get into the car.
Okay. And did you ask him further questions about that?
I did.
And what did you ask him?
I wanted to know if he had ever, during the time after he picked her out, during his stalking time or his trolling time or whatever he referred to it as, if he had ever tried to make contact with her in a public place, like in a grocery store or in a church or in a public place of business to get more information. And he said no, he did not. The only stalking he did of her was basically from afar, watching the house, paying attention to her habits. He had no personal contact with her up until the day that he killed her.
In fact, one of the things that happens when you're looking at a cold case, would it be a fair statement that, you know, attempt anything that you can think about or remember, and you get numerous reports and in this investigation, numerous tips, etc., and those are followed, and you did some investigation regarding maybe things that people may have seen that would indicate who her killer may have been.
Yes.
But as it turns out, there is one killer in this case.
Yes.
I'm going to show a photograph behind you. This is a picture, but this shows Vicki Wegerle in life at 28 years of age.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. Now, did you have some question in your mind about how long he'd actually watched Vicki Wegerle?
I did.
And you asked him about that?
I did.
What did he tell you?
He said that he had normally in his statement, he would spend about 3 weeks of stalking, of surveilling his victim. How long he spent watching her and her family before he killed her, but he thought it would probably be around the normal for him, which was around 3 weeks.
And I think Detective Ralph shared with us that part of it was that he would like maybe stalk someone else at the same time.
Yes.
And in fact, in the course of all the interviews, it was learned by each of you who interviewed him that he was constantly stalking people.
Constantly.
Go ahead. And one of them was Vicki Wegerle, who lived in that home. In this picture?
The family photo shows Mr. Wegerle on the left, daughter Stephanie at the top of the photo, son Brandon at the bottom, and then Vicki on the right.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please. Now, as you've already indicated, now Bill Wegerle was actually the same age, and I think their birthday is one day apart.
They were the same age.
All right. And he was actually at work at the time she was murdered.
Yes.
And as you've indicated, he came home for lunch. Do you have any idea approximately what time he left that day?
He came home around 10:45 to 10:50. He left work about 10:45, and it was a short drive.
Okay, and it was a little while later before he found her.
Yeah, it was about 45 to 50 minutes.
And he had, I think, said in his original interviews that he played with his son for a little bit.
Yes.
He kind of wondered about things.
He took care of Brandon for a little bit, had a quick sandwich, and tried to figure out where Vicki might have gone.
And depicted here is Stephanie Wegerly. She was 9 years of age at the time. And where was she at the time?
She was attending elementary school, was in school at the time.
And actually, the morning that her mother was murdered, actually, the last time she saw her mother alive was when her mother dropped her off at school that day.
Yes.
Go ahead. And in this photograph, we have a picture of 2-year-old Brandon Wegerly. And he was actually, as indicated there, while Vicki was murdered.
He was present.
And in fact, Rader mentions that to you. And how does he describe where Brandon is?
In the interview, he said that Brandon was in the playpen. There was no playpen depicted in any of the crime scene photos from '86. Later, when we would search Rader's property and find his mother lode, we would find a written description of the Wegerly crime in which he went into more detail than what he went into with me and myself and Detective Gouge. And in that document, he described the son as being in the play area, which made more sense, probably an area of the living room with some toys on the floor or something.
Okay, but it's no doubt in the course of your interview and the following investigation that Rader was very well aware of the presence of a 2-year-old while he murdered Vicki Wegerly.
That's correct.
Now, going back a little bit to your discussion with him about how he stalked or trolled Vicki Wegerly, there's a screen behind you. What does he tell you about that?
He mentioned that during his stalking of her, there were times when he would go by the house and would actually hear a piano being played. Was a quite good piano player. There was a piano in the house and she would often play the piano. Mr. Rader said that he heard that piano several times and therefore nicknamed her PJ Piano.
Okay. And because he kind of thought that was a good code name for her, is that what he said?
He thought that was a good code name, yeah.
And there is a photograph of her piano as it appeared in her home at that time.
Yes.
Now, did you ask him about how he managed to get into the home of Vicki Wegerly?
He told us that he used the telephone repairman ruse. He had a hard hat, a yellow hard hat. He was able to stick a Southwestern Bell logo on the front of the hard hat to make it look official. He had a fake identification, which he would talk about in his writings, that he made from a business card, and was able to get into the home as a telephone repairman.
And he refers to it as some type of a boogie hat or bogey hat.
I don't know what that means. I have no idea.
But he was telling you how it opened a lot of doors for him. Is that right?
He said that his telephone repair ruse opened a lot of doors for him.
Go ahead. And this would be the front door that had opened for him on that day.
Yes.
All right. And this is the front door that opens into the living room area, and we can see a toddler, a toy there, perhaps being really. Go ahead. Now, when he was telling you about this, he also let you know that he still had this emblem.
Yes.
Was keeping it.
Yes.
And he referred to it where he kept it as his what? Now, so when you had the opportunity to start searching through his stuff, are these the items that you found that he had kept?
Yes, and the one on the left, the logo, appeared to be a sticker, a transparent, clear sticker with the logo on it. The paper behind it, it looked as if the sticker had been peeled off at least once, probably more. And then when he was done with it, he would put it back on the backing so that he could keep the sticker there.
Okay, and this on the other side is a cutout of a.
It appeared to be the cutout of a telephone book cover, maybe.
Okay, go ahead, please. And then also, is this just a front cover of that?
It was. It was apparently used as part of his telephone repair ruse. He would have that with him, a repair manual, to make him look legitimate.
So these are materials that he didn't throw away. He kept for his memorabilia.
He did keep them, yes.
Go ahead. So on this day, he indicated to you that he actually heard the piano on the day that the morning he was going to kill her.
He said he heard the piano as he approached her house.
Like with the others, of course, prior to this time, we don't know what conversation may have taken place with these victims and their killers.
No, I don't think we do.
And their killer, excuse me. But because of Rader's interview, he attempted to describe, at least in his words, how those conversations went.
Yes.
And he discussed with you conversations that he had with Vicki Wegerle.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
He generalized, saying he made small talk with her. He was able to talk his way in with his outfit and had a briefcase with him that he had a what he called a headset in his writing, making me believe that it was probably one of those old-fashioned headsets that phone repair guys would use, where they would clip on with alligator clips to the wires. He told her that he needed to check the lines. During our discussion, he said she let him right in. He found her phone in the dining room area, began messing with the box, the telephone jack, as if he was looking to find a problem with it. Made small talk while he was doing so. In his written document, it goes into a little more detail about his thoughts at the time and what he was planning to do.
Okay. What does it say?
As he was, according to the written document, as he was making the small talk with her, he was trying to decide whether this was a go or a no-go, in his words. He also describes in the written document not getting in so easily. Vicki, according to the document, had several questions for him at the door. The Wegerles had a dog in the backyard, and at one point Vicki wanted to let the dog in the house so that Rader, the phone repair guy, could go to the backyard. However, he was able to talk her into leaving the dog in the backyard, and he would check the lines in the house first.
So when he initially is talking to Detective Otis and Detective Gouge, he doesn't portray Vicki as having that much problem. It was an easy deal for him to get in.
It seemed much easier in our discussion than it did in his written document.
And his written document is indicated to have been written closer in time to the murder.
Yes.
Now, this photograph behind you is also taken by crime scene investigators when they were called to that home.
Yes.
And this shows her dining room, and her telephone in that dining room is circled there.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead. So he tells her, oh, well, the phone's working, and then what does he do?
He states that in his bag he had his handgun, which was a semi-automatic handgun. He pulled it out, pointed it at her, and told her, let's go back to the bedroom. He said in our interview that she expressed some concern about her child. He was able to control her by fear of the gun and get her back to the bedroom.
In fact, he told you that she said, how about my kid? And he says, I don't know about your kid.
Exactly.
And she also made an attempt to try to get him to understand her husband was coming home.
She made several comments to him about my husband will be either coming home or calling any minute.
Okay. And Rader said, well, I hope not too soon.
He said, I hope he doesn't come home.
And this crime scene photograph, also taken at that time, basically is a view into the entrance of the Wegerle bedroom.
Yes.
All right, so if you're walking down the hall, and if the individual's not like right on that portion of the bed, you're not going to see much
That is
unless you
correct.
actually go in the room.
Yes, you would. Where her body was positioned, which I think we have photos of, you would have to actually enter the bedroom a few feet to see where she was laying.
So even though there was maybe unfortunately some speculation about him not finding her, Bill not finding her for some time, when you look at this situation and as a cold case detective and looking back at these photographs, it's not so amazing that if she was not right there, he wouldn't have seen her without looking around that room.
No, that was understandable, yes.
Go ahead, please. Now, Rader, meaning he, wanted to let you know the materials that he used at that time. And what did he tell you?
He said that he was experimenting with some leather laces. They look to be leather boot laces, as in that go into work boots or hunting boots. And he made that comment at the bottom, leather up, you know, and no, I don't know, so I'm not sure what that means either.
And so Annie describes it as experimenting. Is this kind of the manner in which he spoke
Yeah,
to
he
you?
was, Mr. Rader was very nonchalant, far more than I ever expected. He was, it was like we were talking over a coffee, as if he was relaying a fishing story.
And he expected you to know what leather up meant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. We're going to put on a screen. It's a graphic photograph. Actually, there are 3 photographs in one slide depicting Vicki Wegerle. Okay. Now, these were taken at the time of her autopsy and show the bindings on each of her wrists and also the bindings of her ankles. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those, of course, were maintained in evidence, but this is what he was referring to when he spoke to you as leathering up.
Apparently.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Of course, you continue discussing.
After tying her ankles and her wrists, he put her down on the bed. However, the bindings on the wrists came free. She either broke out of them or got out of them, or they came loose and started a fight with it.
And this is a view of that bed. And the purpose for showing this photograph, a crime scene photograph of the bed, what was the purpose of taking this picture, you think?
Well, as you can see in the bottom right of the photograph, the comforter of the bedspread is messed up. That's a water bed, and you can see that the comforter is moved. It did appear to the investigators in '86 that there had been some type of activity on the bed.
Okay. And Rader then confirmed that to you?
He did.
By saying some more things, describing their fight, is that correct?
Right.
And what did he tell you?
He said they rolled around on the bed. He was trying to gain control of her again once she got loose of the wrist bonds, and that they ended up on the floor. And that is a quote from him. She was fighting for her life, and he was trying to take her down.
So, again, he recognizes the fighting, that she knows that he's trying to kill her.
And even more so in the written document.
Okay. Is there something that you recall that from that document related to this?
In the document, he makes one of his portions of it is that when he had her on the bed, he pulled out his strangler rig, and that once she saw that strangler rig, she began to pray.
Go ahead, please. And so she was praying in this bedroom, and this shows basically the foot of the bed.
Yeah, that's actually the left side of the bed, and then the foot of the bed would be here.
Okay.
You can see the dresser with the television and the other dresser to what would be the right side of the bed, if you will.
Okay. And there is a pointer there, a laser pointer right there.
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you kind of show where her body was basically located?
It doesn't
as best
show
you
in the
can?
photo, but basically it's in this area here.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please. Now, he described that fight. In fact, she did, knowing that he was trying to kill her, he describes it as fighting like a hellcat.
Yes, that's how he described it.
And when he was talking to you, you talked to him after Detective Clint Snyder had talked to him about Kathy Bright.
Yes.
And so when he said the word, she fought like a hellcat too, he was referring to Kathy Bright.
He was, and he would add that Vicki fought harder.
Now, and when he told you that, he also mentioned to you another little problem that she presented for him, and what was that?
He said that during the fight she nicked him and indicated that she had scratched him, and he had said on his face. In his written document, he documented her scratching him on his neck.
In fact, he said something to you on the order that you might be able to see it, I think.
He actually asked me in the interview if I could see. Apparently he thought he had a scar. I couldn't see anything where he was pointing.
You've attended quite a few autopsies in the course of your work as a homicide investigator.
Yes.
And you've seen evidence from individuals who have been attacked and indicated things on their body that would indicate struggle.
Yes.
All right. And when you looked at the autopsy photographs of Vicki Wegerle, was it apparent to you from those photographs that she had struggled with her attacker?
Oh, very apparent.
Okay. Go ahead, please. We're going to show 2 autopsy photographs of Vicki bruising and head and neck. Okay, go ahead, please. All right. Can you point out some of those areas in addition to the ligature marks?
There was, and it doesn't show up real well on the screen, there was an area of contusion, of bruising here by the right ear. An abrasion appears on her right jaw area. And then the ligature marks are numerous. And it appears that there was activity of ligature strangulation that either was unsuccessful because of the fighting, more than likely, and then areas where the strangulation would be reapplied, trying to get a stranglehold on her while she fought.
Another thing that you're familiar with, you've had an occasion to observe on the skin, face, and the eyes of individuals who are being strangled or lacking oxygen, something that shows itself in the form of what's called petechial hemorrhaging. Are you aware of that indication?
Yes, ma'am.
It's probably not a very good way of phrasing it. Why don't you describe what that is?
Petechial hemorrhaging is when the small blood vessels in the face or in the eyes begin to burst due to strangulation or asphyxiation. And Miss Wegerle, from the photo, I did not see her in person in death, but from this photo, it appears that she has some petechial hemorrhaging on her right cheek, which would be an indicator of strangulation as well.
Thank you. Go ahead. We have one other photograph that shows abrasions to her ear and head. If you'll just point to that.
Yes, ma'am. There's a bruise and an abrasion here, and then some more marked bruising here behind the right ear.
Now, Lieutenant Landwehr and Agent Morton from the FBI had interviewed Mr. Rader prior to the time that you interviewed him.
Yes.
And you're aware that during that discussion he had talked to them about this happening to him, about her scraping him.
Yes.
All right, go ahead, please. Now, we have a quote from his interview here where he's describing to you that she either scratched me and then he says, "I know you." Now, that was because of his interaction with Lieutenant Landwehr where that was discussed and described.
That is correct.
It's not because he knew it from something he read in the paper or anything like that.
No, that was the fact that we had found DNA under her fingernails was not released publicly at that point.
In fact, he invited you to sort of look, at his head and face and neck area to see if you could see where
That
he'd
is
been
correct.
scratched, because he thought he might still have a scar or something.
Yes.
Did you do that?
I did. I looked. I didn't see any.
Didn't see one. Okay, thank you. This is an autopsy photograph of only the left hand of Vicki Wegerle. Okay. Turns in out that this hand, this is a picture of her hand at the time of autopsy.
Yes.
And fingernail scrapings were taken at that time.
Yes.
Now, at the time when these fingernail scrapings were taken in 1985, what was the purpose of doing that?
In 1986, the technology for DNA was in its infancy. Fingernail scrapings were taken as a routine part of a homicide autopsy because analysts would actually look microscopically for human skin under the fingernails to give them an indication as to whether the victim was able to scratch or attack her.
Okay, so they did a process where they scraped it out and saved it in a tin.
Correct.
And indicated where it came from on the outside and sealed it. Now, so they're looking for skin,
Correct.
as you indicated. But if there were blood present, that would not necessarily be useful to them at that time.
They probably could have done basic serology on blood. However, there was certainly not routine DNA testing in 1986.
Okay. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. All right. So, Steve Ketchis, who was with the Wichita Police Department for some time as a lab investigator, took and preserved those fingernail scrapings.
Yes.
From both of her hands, actually.
Correct.
But it turns out to be her left hand that caught the killer.
Yes.
2/14 of the year 2000, you were assigned this cold case review, and you took those scrapings after looking at all the evidence in this case and realizing those were still there. You took those to the Sedgwick County Regional Forensic Science Center for DNA examination.
Detective Gouge and I took several pieces of evidence for DNA examination to the Science Center, including the fingernail scrapings.
Okay, good. Then the next event related to this is August 14th of 03, and Daniel Fanistock, who is a DNA analyst, he notified you about what he had discovered. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what did he discover?
The DNA lab found unknown donor, unknown male donor DNA from the fingernail scrapings from the autopsy. It appeared to us to be killer DNA. The killer's DNA was left behind.
And that was, in particular, as we've said, the left hand. Go ahead. Then on April the 2nd, of 2004, you got another report from a different DNA analyst that works at the same location, Shelley Stedman. And what did she tell you?
Lieutenant Landwehr had submitted the blue robe from the Fox scene and other items for DNA testing from the BTK cold case. After the DNA examination was done on those items, we learned that the DNA profile found on the Nancy Fox robe, unknown male donor, matched the unknown male donor from the Wegerle scene.
Okay. And that was, when we're speaking of the blue robe, we're actually speaking of that blue nightgown that Miss Folston had in here and was showing to Detective Ralph that had cutouts.
Correct.
Right. And that's where we found a match to this fingernail scraping.
Correct.
Go ahead. Then on just a few days later, the same analyst, Shelley Stedman, April 9th of 04, she advised you of what?
She contacted Lieutenant Landwehr to tell him that the rest of the BTK evidence was undergoing testing, and Lieutenant Landwehr had submitted, and that there was another match for DNA to the two items we previously talked about, and then the basement floor of the Otero scene. The semen that was recovered from that scene matched our other two items as well. So we had a three-way match of DNA.
Okay, so we have lab investigator Ron Eggleston, also had been with the Wichita Police Department for some time in that capacity, from the Otero crime scene.
Correct.
And that area of the floor shown by Kevin O'Connor in the picture when he was discussing with the KBI, Mr. Thomas, I believe, Larry Thomas, we could see that location on the floor where they had taken several DNA or swabs, not for DNA at that time, but swabbings to try to collect and preserve that evidence.
Yes.
And in fact, it was preserved to the extent by that lab investigator to that it made a match in 2004.
Yes.
Go ahead. Now, fast forward to February 25th of the year 2005, when Dennis Rader is arrested. Detective Dana Gouge was asked to collect swabs from Rader. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And do you have knowledge of where that was done? And I have a word up there. It's sometimes called buccal or buccal swabs. And how does that process happen? And did you observe it happening with Rader?
I did. Detective Gouge executed a search warrant we had for Rader's DNA on the date of his arrest. Buccal or buccal swabs are simply oral cheek swabs taken with a long Q-tip. Gouge took several of those swabs from Rader, took the cheek swabs pursuant to the warrant, collected them, submitted them, and they were immediately taken to two separate labs for examination and comparison to our known DNA that we already had.
Why take him to two separate labs?
We used two labs for verification purposes. We used our local Sedgwick County Regional Forensic Science Center DNA lab, and we also utilized the KBI lab in Topeka so that we would have two tests, same sample, verification testing.
Go ahead. And so Shelley Stedman with the Sedgwick County Regional Forensic Science Center and Cindy Schuler with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, also a DNA analyst, on February the 26th of 2005, began working on those samples that you had taken from Rader.
Yes.
And can you describe that? They worked through the night, didn't they?
They did, nonstop.
And were they working together at all, calling up to see what your answer is?
Not that I know of, but I wasn't there. But I don't believe so.
Did they arrive at a similar answer?
They did.
All right. And that was what?
That was, in very simple terms, the DNA matched from all of those crime scenes with Dennis Rader's known DNA, and that he was the BTK killer.
Okay. Now, there's a thing that they do with DNA, and that is a statistical evaluation.
Yes.
And they say, what is the probability of selecting an unrelated individual at random from the Caucasian population?
Yes.
And at the Sedgwick County Regional Forensic Science Center, they tested at 15 loci, and what is that number?
The statistical number given to us by Shelley and the people at the DNA lab here were the odds of it being someone other than Dennis Rader, to put it in very simple terms, would be 1 in 819 quadrillion people.
Thank you. Now, back to Rader's version of how he continued to make sure that Vicki Wegerle was dead. What did he do?
As it says on the screen, he got her down, continued to strangle her. He was able to get his hand on a nylon stocking that was available there in a drawer in the dresser. He used that nylon stocking, wrapped it around her neck, which he would tell me gave him the added pressure that he needed to take her down and put her down, and he killed her by strangling her.
In fact, the picture behind you, a crime scene photograph taken of an open drawer there in her home where it appears that she kept pantyhose and socks.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Go ahead. This is a graphic photograph. There will be 2 photographs. They do not actually show her face, but a portion of Vicki Wegerle's neck. Go ahead. This shows the pantyhose at her neck.
It does.
All right, and in the manner in which they were tied. And then the next photograph shows a different view of those strangulation marks or ligature marks that we've talked about.
Yes, and just for information, the tape here that's visible in both of the photos is from the medical treatment, the resuscitation efforts. It was not applied it was applied by the medics.
Okay.
It is not part of the crime.
Because there was some hope at that time that maybe they could save her.
There was an extensive attempt to resuscitate her by the paramedics and by the emergency room physicians.
Thank you. Now, he started worrying about her husband coming home and describes it as a real nice mess. Yes, go. This photograph is of that bedroom floor that we really couldn't see in the other picture, but you can see the dresser in the back. And this is where Bill Wegerle found Vicki.
Yes.
All right. And go to the next one. These 2 photographs, also crime scene photographs, they show that hose that was there and the leather shoelace and a knife. Can you tell us about that?
The stocking and the leather laces were wrapped around her head, neck, and mouth. Bill Wegerle used his own pocket knife when he found her and used that to cut those bindings from her, trying to save her life.
Now, these communications that Rader decided to send to various members of the media, or just tape on signs, or somehow get to you, he had sent basically a black and white sheet of paper that was a copy of the Vicki Wegerle driver's license and 3 photographs taken of her at the time of her murder.
Yes.
Now, one of the things those photographs were immediately recognized as most likely coming from someone who killed her.
I think they had to come from her killer, yes.
But you knew that early because at the time they had actually removed her out trying to save her life, as you've described, and no one had taken crime scene photographs of her laying on that floor.
Yes, her body was not present in the house when the police arrived. There were no photographs of the crime scene which contained her body. She had been transported out.
And behind you, this is basically another copy for the screen that indicates that when it was sent, and as this communication was sent to Herslaviana, or it was arrived at the Eagle, Herslaviana discovered it and eventually turned it over to the police.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Now, in your discussion with them, because you had this sheet of paper of the communication, did you talk to him about taking these pictures?
I did.
And what did he tell you?
I wanted to know if she was alive or dead in the photos. I couldn't tell. He said that she was dead, that there were other things he had wanted to do. He had certainly planned to do other things. He'd brought the Polaroid with him for those reasons, but that everything had gone bad. As he said before, it was a big mess. So he had time to snap 3 quick photos, adjust her clothing in each of the photos for sexual purposes before he took off.
Okay, go ahead. And then he points at the first picture that you could see and tells you what?
He changed her dress, moved her clothing around, put a gag in her mouth after her death, snapped those photos. Goes into a little more detail in his writings, but basically that's what he said. Stuffed the gag in her, pulled her shirt up, pulled her pants down in different photos, and then took off.
2 graphic photos showing her. And these photographs are showing now are the Polaroids that you all collected when you searched his mother lode, if you will.
Yes,
Now his mother lode is something that he kept. Where did he keep that?
in his office in
Okay.
Park City,
All right.
at City Hall,
In a drawer.
in a drawer.
And these 2 pictures that he had taken, which have been changed so that they are not as explicit as they were. There's been some brushing in some private areas of Miss Wegerly. But these two photographs show her after he had stuffed, as he said, the gag in her mouth. And then one shows how he pulled her pants down a little more, as he described to you.
Correct.
All right, go ahead. And then also you found her driver's license.
Yes, her Kansas driver's license that had been missing since the day of her murder.
Okay, go ahead. Now, he tells you this statement that is, as he was leaving, he could hear EMS. Now, that can't be quite right because of Mr. Wegerly coming. So
Correct.
what happened there?
Once again, the written document goes into more detail. Basically, Rader tells me that he leaves the scene in Vicky's car. He goes west on 13th, and his plan is to start dumping evidence immediately, which he does. Street, dumps some items in a dumpster there. Continues north on west to 21st, ends up by Sweetbriar, dumps the rest of the physical evidence that he wanted to get rid of, and then returns to the scene of the murder, returns to that area because he's going to dump Vicky's car close to the house because he's got to get back to his. And as he is doing that, as he is dumping her car, getting into his vehicle to leave the area, is when he hears the ambulance approach.
Now, where had he left his vehicle?
He left his vehicle, according to him, in the back parking lot of the Indian Hills Shopping Center, which is right across the street to the south from the Wegerly house.
Now, this is a photograph behind you, also taken at that time, because police later discovered the Wegerly vehicle.
Yeah, while the officers were working the homicide scene, other officers obviously were canvassing the area and did find her car in the 1300 block of North Edwards, which is about 2 blocks to the west from the scene.
Okay, go ahead. And this is just another shot, a little closer of that. Now, there is an added text here talking about Bill Wegerly. Now, he was obviously interviewed after this extensively.
Yes, he was.
And when you do a cold case review, you're looking back at things that people ask him and stuff. And in your assessment of that, did he describe everything in detail about what he had observed?
Bill Wegerly's story to the detectives in September of '86 as to what he saw on his way home for lunch. He had reported driving by and seeing what he believed was his wife's car passing him in traffic with a male behind the wheel. He got a quick glance at it, told himself that wouldn't be her car, it must be one that looks just like it. Got home, found her car missing, and then assumed that he had apparently thought it was a male, but it must have been Vicky in the car. His story to the detectives in '86 matched Rader's story as to the direction of travel that he took when he left and that he was driving her car. They passed each other.
So upon questioning, he starts telling them about this event.
Yes.
And the reports indicate an accurate description.
Yes, he was accurate.
Go ahead. Now, did you ask Rader a question about what would have happened? Because he said he'd heard the sirens and stuff.
Right.
And what did he tell you?
I asked him what he would have done had he been stopped by the police for a traffic violation for any reason. I wanted to see what he would say. And he said, "Oh, Jesus, thought about it a few seconds and said, I guess I'd hope I would be quicker with the gun than they would be, referring to the police.
That he would shoot the police?
He would shoot the police, yes.
Go ahead. Now, this is a video still that was obtained courtesy of Cake, but this is a film that is an actual photograph of Bill Wegerle taking his young son Brandon out of the home after police arrived.
Yes, that was taken the day of the homicide.
Right.
The film was shot that day.
Thank you. Go ahead. Now, he wanted to let you know that he did have, as you've indicated, a piece of a document that he's written in longhand. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've had an opportunity to read it, obviously. You've
I
been
have.
talking about it. And is this a copy of the first page of a nine-page longhand story written by Rader describing the murder of Vicki Wegerle?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell us, after reviewing that, I don't want you to read the entire thing, but can you tell us if you selected some things that you think are relevant to this hearing that the court has not yet heard Dennis Rader?
I did select some things that I thought were relevant to this hearing from these 9 pages.
Okay. Would you go ahead and tell us about that, or what you have gleaned from that?
To add to his, I hate to use the word credibility, but to add to the accurateness of his story and to match up with the facts of the murder, he describes the date, September 16th, 1986. He begins his planning for the murder at about 10 a.m., according to his document. He decides and talks about that he has picked this house because it's a West Wichita victim, talking about striking in the northeast part of town before, in the south central part of town, the southeast part of town. It's time for a West victim, apparently, so he can spread that out. He lists the address of the Wegerle house. He has documented some of his stalking to the point where he knew that the husband or the man, he wasn't sure which, would sometimes arrive at lunchtime or in the afternoon. He lists a inventory of his kit that he brought with him, which included some cord, a gag, a camera, a knife, some gloves, some wrap, some plastic bags, Vaseline, wire cutters, a pry bar, and his special strangling rig. He goes on to talk about prior to murdering Vicki, he wanted to set a reason for him to be in the neighborhood. He didn't want to appear suspicious, so he made contact with an elderly couple who lived next door to the east of the Wegerles, which is verified by the neighborhood canvass that was done by officers in 1986, that he contacted them with his Southwestern Bell telephone repair ruse and did pretend to check their phone lines.
But then if you go and contact Southwestern Bell, since Rader didn't work for them, you would not find him.
That is correct. And the older couple next door were interviewed about any suspicious activity, and they did not mention the fact that a repairman showed up that day. However, they were quite elderly at the time. He describes the house and why he likes it because of the big deep porch, and it sets off the street. When he makes contact with Vicki, he sees the small male child in the play area in the living room. When he makes his entry, pretends to check the phone, he pulls his gun out and remarks and writes down that she was very scared. He demands her purse and the keys to her car prior to any other activity and gets those. He says that as this is going on, as he's getting the items from her and holding her at gunpoint, the child is watching. He tells her that he's going to take her into the bedroom for sex. She becomes upset and says that her husband will be home at any time and begins to beg him to leave her be.
He describes it as begging.
Beg. He says, please. She begs. Once again, he quotes it. He gets her in the bedroom, tells her he's going to take these photographs of her and tells her to get undressed, and she begins once again begging him to leave her be. He reaches inside the briefcase and pulls out his strangler rig, at which point she begins a prayer. He then begins trying to strangle her, but the cord breaks on his strangler rig, and then she begins to fight him. She documents in here how she has scratched him on the neck and raked his neck with her fingernails. But he's able to get her down with the pantyhose and kill her. He says she is dying now. It took a long time to strangle her. I need to leave. Her husband may be home soon. Should I stay and kill him? He decides not to because things may get out of hand. He readies his camera, flips her over, puts her arms behind her back, even though they're not tied because she broke the bindings, and starts to take photographs of her. Takes the 3 photographs, which he documents her body position exactly, and then the rest of the note describes how he left, how he dumped the evidence, what evidence he dumped, and that he then returned back to work.
So he had actually thought or entertained the idea of waiting on Bill Wegerle to kill him also.
It certainly appears that way.
All right. Now, he also had with this a diagram that he had drawn of his movements and of the home and the body of Vicki Wegerle as he
Yes,
left.
that was with his documents.
Also with his documents, again, news clippings that he kept to remind himself of the murder. This is in the black binder in his mother lode.
Yes, and he had them all dated, as you can see.
And finally, he was disappointed that he didn't have time to really enjoy this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is a quote. He didn't really have time, and that's something he writes about, his regrets in that letter. Is that correct?
Yes.
PJ Piano. Did he have an afterlife concept for PJ Piano?
He did.
And what was that?
She was to be his bondage slave woman.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Rob?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
State may call their next witness. State will call their next witness. Call your next witness, please.
Do you want me to do it?
No, I'll do it. State calls Sam Houston.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the case now and here will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
I do.
Please be seated.
Sir.
Good afternoon.
For the record, and what the sign says, is that you are Captain Sam Houston of the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you were part of the BTK task force. Is that right?
I worked on part of the case, yes.
Were you assigned to the matter of the homicide of Dolores Davis? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the date of death in that particular case was January 18th, 1991. Is that right?
That's correct.
But in fact, Miss Davis's body was not discovered until subsequently in February 1st of 1991.
That is correct.
Captain Houston, at the time back in 1991, when you were assigned to this case, can you tell me what your rank was with the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department?
At that time, I was a detective with the Sheriff's Office.
And do you recall how you came to be at the scene of the of this particular case back in 1991?
On that weekend, I was the duty detective. I received a duty call from 911. Patrol deputies were on North Hillside requesting a detective and a lab investigator.
What did you learn about Dolores Davis at that time when you went to the address up there at North Hillside?
Deputies have been called to that residence, and the acquaintance had gone to the residence to contact her, found that the back and sliding glass door of the residence had been broken in with a cinder block, and she was missing from the residence. I arrived about the same time as one of the lab investigators, the patrol deputies at the scene, telling me that the acquaintance had no idea where she was at. Mrs. Davis was missing from the residence. It appeared to be some of the things in the residence were in disarray, and there were items missing from the residence.
Now, the last that she had been seen would have been on the night before, which would have been the 18th of January in 1991. Is that correct?
That's correct, Friday night.
Friday night. And do you know, had she been with a male acquaintance that evening before?
That is correct. She'd been out to dinner with a male acquaintance. They'd gone to the Red Coach at 53rd Street North and I-135 for dinner. Had returned back to the residence on North Hillside, and he had bid her good evening at about 7:15.
And had she had plans to see her gentleman friend the next day?
That is correct.
And what time would that have been the next day?
Approximately around noon, or around noon the next morning.
And so at noon the next morning, did he arrive then at her home to find her missing?
He arrived, that's what the plan was, that he was going to wash her car for, and that's when he discovered that she was missing from the residence.
Now, did you indicate that her vehicle was there at the residence?
When I arrived, her vehicle was sitting in the driveway of the residence.
And did you at that time locate any keys to that car?
Through the investigation, the gentleman friend indicated to us that he saw a set of keys up on the roof above the garage portion of the residence.
So during the investigation, you found that this had been a home burglary done by somebody throwing a large cinder block through the glass door into the home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mrs. Davis was missing.
That's correct.
And that she had been seen by her gentleman friend, that would be a Mr. Ray, the evening before. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And she was no longer at the residence on the 19th.
Correct.
Okay. What activities did the Sheriff's Department take at that time in order to attempt to locate Miss Davis?
The patrol deputies were assigned to different areas in the north part of the county, searching the areas, the roadways. Assignments were made to them. Neighborhoods were done with the neighbors in those areas to locate, see if anyone had seen anything that had taken place at the North Hillside address.
And you located one of the road patrol officers located some items from her home that were close within that area.
That's correct. Approximately around 7:30 that night, Deputy Matt Schroeder found bed sheets and bed items on Woodlawn just north of 69th Street North, stuffed in a culvert.
When those items were located, were you able to ascertain whether they matched anything in the residence on North Hillside?
When I was at the residence and I made my walk through the residence, the bed had been stripped. There was no sheets, no bedding on the mattress in the residence.
And the items that were in the culvert, what did they consist of?
They consisted of a sheet, or two sheets, two top sheets. I believe that's what was in that culvert.
When you were able to visit with people that were familiar with the home, were any other items of interest alleged to have been taken from that house?
That's correct. The jewelry box that was, there was a jewelry box that was missing from the residence. I was informed that a camera was missing. some of the drawers in her bedroom were open. And it looked like it had been gone through.
Was there any particular types of apparel drawers that seemed to have been rifled through?
The women's lingerie drawers had been gone through.
As you continued to work on the investigation of Dolores Davis as a missing person, did you develop any immediate determinations or clues as to her whereabouts at that time?
We didn't know where she was at. When we found the sheets in the culvert, we knew that something bad had gone wrong.
Were there any other signs around the house other than the break-in? Did you note whether or not the phone lines had been cut?
We did find that the phone lines had been cut on the outside of the residence. We did note that the phones had been pulled out of the walls, or the jacks had been pulled out in the inside of the residence. There was Miss Davis had a cat. She had cats. The cat litter box had been turned over in the residence. There were items from her purse that were missing. We didn't find a driver's license. We didn't find a Social Security card. So there was quite a few things that were missing from the residence.
By appearances, did it look as if there had been a struggle in part of that home?
There looked like there had been a struggle in the kitchen area, in the doorways going out to the garage area. It looked like there had been something had gone on there.
And also that there had been some rifling through personal property in the bedroom.
That's correct.
When was your next opportunity to have further information about the whereabouts of Dolores Davis?
In February the 1st, I received a page from the office stating that patrol deputies were at a location at 3600 West 117th Street North. A boy was out walking his dog and had found a body of a female underneath of a bridge at that location.
And what action did the Sheriff's Department take at that time?
I went to the scene along with several other members of the Investigations Division. We found the partially clothed body of a female at that location underneath of a bridge. We photographed, we videotaped, we diagrammed the location of this lady's body.
Were you able to identify her at that time?
That time, we had an idea. I had an idea who it was. I later took dental records to a dentist, Dr. Squires, and had her Dolores Davis's dental records compared with what Dr. Eckert at the time had given me from the autopsy, and they were confirmed that it was Dolores Davis.
And an autopsy was performed on Miss Davis's remains?
That's correct.
And do you know what the cause of death was?
Ligature strangulation.
And the body was not located then until couple of weeks after she had disappeared, January the 18th until February the 1st. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And by that time, had there been significant decomposition of the body?
The body was in stages of decomp, yes.
However, this was in January, and had the weather remained somewhat cold during that period of time?
It was a cold January.
And you said that a young boy had come upon the remains of Mrs. Davis. Is that right?
That's correct.
And was this a remote area where the body had been found?
It's a rural area of Sedgwick County. I believe there's maybe one or two houses along that stretch of 117th. It's farmland. There's not very many residential area homes there.
Was this case then reclassified from a missing person then to a murder?
Correct.
Now, at this time, you had indicated that there were very few clues or leads that would indicate any individual who might be connected with this particular case. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so was this case worked on for a lengthy period of time in order to look for anybody that might have been connected with the death of Ms. Davis?
Yes, it was.
So did this remain, in essence, a cold case for a number of years?
Yes, it did.
Was it there a time when this case resurfaced when a possibility of a suspect became apparent?
That is correct.
Can you tell me when that was?
I received a call from Deputy Chief Lee, the Wichita Police Department, in February of this year. He advised me that they had arrested or taken a suspect into custody in conjunction with the BTK cases. He also advised me that this person may be a suspect in the Marine Hedge case and the Dolores Davis case.
Now, you'd been in the community as a law enforcement officer for many years, since the 70s, is that right?
I have been with the Sheriff's Department almost 29 years.
And during that time, the community has known about the BTK killings. Had you ever connected them with this particular case?
During this investigation and when this happened, we looked at the similarities with the police department's cases. With Marine Hedge, we looked at the similarities in Dolores Davis. We had the FBI behavior specialist come in. I worked, myself and Sergeant Lee worked with Lieutenant Landwehr and other detectives of the police department. We compared things, we looked at things to see if this case was connected to their cases. So yes, it was done numerous times.
But in these cases, the bodies were left at dump sites as opposed to being left within the homes. There were a number of different things between those other cases in the city of Wichita as opposed to these cases in the county. Is that correct?
Correct.
So back to when you talked to Detective Lee, did you then have the ability to visit with Dennis Rader in February of 2005?
That is correct.
And did you then find from Mr. Rader that he indeed had been the murderer of Dolores Davis and Marine Hedge?
That is correct.
Did you then have an opportunity to speak directly with him about the nature and circumstances surrounding the murder of Dolores Davis back in 1991?
Yes, I did.
Did you talk with him with anyone else present?
Detective Kevin Bradford with the Sheriff's Office was present with me.
All right. And do you remember what date it was that you visited with Mr. Rader?
That was on February 24th, I believe.
After the 25th.
I don't have it right here in front of me. Yes.
You'd be early if it was on the 24th.
It would be the 25th, I believe.
Now, you've had an opportunity, have you not, to review the videotapes that were taken in connection with his statements that he made to law enforcement officers?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had an opportunity to spend time with him independently about the Davis case.
That's correct.
So you've had an opportunity to look at this PowerPoint presentation, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you know that we went through and you selected some parts from that where you had some discussions with Mr. Rader, and his answers will be on the PowerPoint.
That is correct.
So when we go through this, we'll just take a look and ask you some questions about some of the comments he made during the interview that you had with him back in February of this year, okay?
Correct.
There's a note there from some of the commentary that Mr. Rader made, and this, I believe, talks about how he might have come in contact with Mrs. Davis. Do you recall him talking about how he might have seen her, come in contact with her?
He stated that he saw her, he was out driving, and he saw her, and when he lived up in that area, he was out driving around, and he saw her and thought that would be a possibility.
Now, she lived at 6226 North Hillside out there in the county.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
And as I understand, Mr. Rader lives right down in Park City, and that would be right down 61st Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, I have a map here, and two small circles just came down with a line. Do those approximate the distances between Mr. Rader's area where he lives on the left and Mrs. Davis's home there on the right?
That is correct.
So that would be, what, about 1.5 miles down the road from each other, generally?
Generally.
All right, so that would be in the same area then, out there by Park City and out in the county.
Yes.
And so Mr. Rader indicated that he had seen her before, or?
He'd seen her he saw her at the residence. He saw her either leaving the residence or around her residence.
And this indicates what? That he started getting lazy?
He told me that he started getting lazy after the last few years with Marine Hedge and Davis.
And so he was looking for victims within his own neighborhood. Is that what that appears to be?
That's what it appears to me.
Okay. Now, you were familiar with the materials that were taken during the seizure of property by warrant at Mr. Rader's home and as well at his work site. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, ma'am.
And during the, there was also information that was sent by various communications to different media stations.
That is correct.
That's correct. You'll see here a copy of a cover of a fiction novel that Mr. Rader had sent to Fox News. And another copy was also found in what he terms his motherlode. Do you see the title of that book?
Yes, ma'am.
What does it say?
Never kill anyone you know.
Now, again, this is Mr. Rader having someone that he's stalking or trolling in his own neighborhood. Would he spend some time in checking these people out? What would he do?
He told me that he would periodically go by. He told me that at the time he would go to the Keachai post office, usually about every day, and that would give him an opportunity to look to see the back of the house, to go by the house. He told me that he went by several times over a month or so period.
In fact, did he think that Dolores Davis was a man?
For a period of time, he told me he thought she was. He couldn't. She wore her hair real short, and he wasn't sure that it was a guy or whether it was a woman. And then at one point in time, when he was going by, he finally decided that this was a female.
Now, this is an aerial shot from here at the county, showing her properties in a pretty rural area out there at 61st and Hillside. The red circle would be her home. Is that right?
That is correct.
What's the blue circle?
The blue circle is some dog kennels. There's a kennel there where people store their dogs, and it's just north and east of Mrs. Davis' residence.
Did Mr. Rader develop a name for Mrs. Davis as one of his projects?
That is correct.
What did he call her?
He called her Dogside.
So that would be PJ Dogside?
That's correct.
And meaning her...
Well, I asked him, I said Dogside, and he said, yeah, you have the dog kennels here by her house and Hillside. So that's where it came from, Dogside.
Did he always drive a car, or how did he get to this area?
He told me one time he went out there on a bicycle and checked it out.
Now, talking about his prowling, what would he do when he'd go out and prowl?
He was trying to find a way into the house. He didn't know how he was going to make it into the house. During the investigation, the lab detectives determined on the north side of the house the south side of the house where Mrs. Davis's bedroom was at, it appeared that someone had been standing out there, would stand out there and watch. peeking in through the windows, looking in through the windows where her bedroom was at. And they'd done that several times. And on the south side of the house, I believe that's where also the phone lines were.
Okay, and that's a scene of a scene photo showing that the phone lights were indeed cut at her home. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now we have a photograph of her cat. Tell us the story of that in the family that was relayed about this particular cat.
In speaking with her son, Jeff Davis, he told me that her mom, or his mom, had said the cats got real spooked one night. She didn't understand what was wrong with them. She thought maybe there was an animal or something that was outside the residence that got them really worked up. During the interview with Mr. Rader, he told me that on one of his attempts that he was looking in through the windows, the cat started smacking the windows. He spooked one of the cats. And so that, to me, that corroborated what Jeff had told me that his mom had related to him prior to her being killed.
She didn't have any big Rottweilers or big dogs there at the house.
No, she had cats. She was a
Just the
cat.
cat.
She was a cat person.
Now, Mr. Rader was involved in not only had work at the as a dog catcher, but also he did some other things, including scouting. Is that right?
That's what he said.
Tell us about that.
He stated that he was really involved with scouts. He stated that he used the scout thing several times to be able to get away to do his deeds. On the night that he went to Mrs. Davis's residence, he was at a scout function in Harvey County.
Now, the Boy Scouts, you have some kind of Boy Scout thing in the winter time out at the Trapper's Lodge. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Every January, the Boy Scouts here in this area have what they call Trapper's Rendezvous, and it's always held at Harvey County Westlake in north or in the western part of Harvey County. It's up by north of Halstead, north and west of Halstead, Kansas. And they go up to Harvey County Westlake and they camp out. It's the dead of winter. It's usually the coldest part of the winter. They have a lot of mountain man type activities, tomahawk throws, old time stuff that they would have, simulating back to the trappers in the 1800s.
What age group is this? Cubs or this Weeblos, or who's this for?
Well, there are Weeblos up there. There's Boy Scouts up there. Some troops or some packs will take Cubs up there. Anybody that stays overnight, I believe, has to be, now in this day and age, has to be a Weeblo, a second-year Weeblo, or Boy Scout. Any of the kids that are younger than that cannot stay overnight.
Okay. Well, what was Mr. Rader's involvement? Was he a Cubs a leader there with this trappers or pack, or?
He was a Boy Scout leader, a Cub leader in one of the churches up there in Park City.
So did he have an obligation up there with this trappers camp?
That's correct.
And on January the 18th, would he have had an obligation in 1991, the night that Dolores Davis was killed? Did he have an obligation at that Trapper's Lodge?
That's correct.
Now, tell me about that obligation.
He stated that he went up there on that Friday night to set up the tents, make ready the camp for his troop for the weekend outing.
And did he use that outing for any other purpose?
Yes, he did.
What was that purpose?
He used that outing for his own purposes of going to Mrs. Davis's house later that night on Friday night and killing her.
So as he says in his statement to you, that was his alibi, his cover-up, to go up there and get the camp set up so that he could pretend he was up there and go slip into town and commit a murder.
That is correct.
So he goes up to this trapping camp from his parents' house, is that right?
He goes to Trapper's Rendezvous. That's where he's at.
Where's that at? How far out?
That's in Harvey County. Harvey County Westlake is approximately you go 3 miles north on the Halstead Road, then you go 3 miles west to where the Harvey County Westlake is.
Okay, then what did he do?
He left there and he went to his parents' house on North Seneca.
All right. What did he do at his parents' house?
He changed his clothes from his Boy Scout uniform to his what he stated was his hit clothes.
His hit clothes, are those kind of special clothing that he wears?
He described them as dark clothing, so he couldn't be noticed in the dark. He
Okay.
blended in with the dark.
So then he leaves his parents' house, and where does he go from there?
He drives from his parents' house on North Seneca to the Baptist Church on 61st Street in Park City.
Okay, and that would have been on the south side of 61st Street, is that right?
Correct.
What's over at the now the Baptist church isn't his regular church.
No, but it wasn't. But it was he was affiliated with that church because of the Boy Scouts.
All right, so he has a key to the Baptist church,
Yes, ma'am.
and he's with the Christ Lutheran Church. So he's got access to two churches.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so he goes over to the Baptist church. So what's he going to do over there?
He goes there, makes his final preparation, leaves his car, and then he walks to Mrs. Davis's residence.
Okay, he's already got his hit outfit on, and he drives over there with his vehicle and parks it at the Baptist church. And this is Friday night, is that right?
That's correct.
Do we know about what time this would be?
Would have been around 9:30, 10 o'clock.
All right. By this time, Mrs. Davis is already home, having been dropped off by her friend at 5 o'clock after dinner.
They went to dinner around 5:30.
Got home at
Approximately around 7:15.
All right. So now he's at the Baptist church. So what kind of final preparations is he making?
He was making sure that he had his hit kit, his guns, and the items that he needed for to do what he was going to do.
He needed to get ready to kill Mrs. Davis.
That's correct.
All right. Now, I've got a picture of the Park City Baptist Church, and this is, and we'll show in another slide, this is on the south side of 61st Street out there in Park City.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Not to be confused with his church. Okay, so then he leaves there, and he does what?
He left the church there on 61st Street. He walks down 61st Street, past Hydraulic, and then he starts angling up through an open field on the edge there of Park City. He gets up where that one circle is, up to the north, to the top and right-hand side of this picture is a cemetery.
Okay, let's start in here. I'm pointing to where his home would be, is that right?
That's correct.
But he had come from someplace different, his parents' home.
His parents' home is 4800 block of
South
North
right.
Seneca.
So which way would that be?
That would be approximately down in this area, probably.
Okay.
Or over in here.
So he's gone back, actually from his parents' home. His home is in here, we're at the first circle.
Correct.
Then, so he's gone there, and this is 61st Street.
Correct.
This is where the Baptist church is, this second large circle, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he parks his car there, and then the red line going to the north would be the area that he walked north on 61st Street.
That would be east.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. That would be eastbound on 61st Street.
That is correct.
Okay. Now you indicated that he then went to the north and east to a cemetery, and the second circle here at the top is a cemetery that's located on Hillside. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Now, why did he walk all that direction way up north?
You know, I really don't know. He stated that he wanted to come in from the north side of the residence. I think he was afraid of being spotted on 61st Street because that's a fairly traveled roadway.
Okay, so this is just woodsy or what? I mean, just land and.
In 1991, this was open field. There was nothing there.
This is a 1991 map, isn't it?
That is correct.
Okay. So this kind of barren field and just walking across there to the cemetery. Okay, then coming back down to the south and to the down south here. And then this circle would be where Mrs. Davis's home was.
That is correct.
And the kennels behind it.
That is correct.
All right. Now, here's a photograph, and what does that show us?
This is the back of Mrs. Davis's house on North Hillside. That is the sliding glass door where point of entry was made into her residence.
What's this out here?
That's broken glass from the sliding glass door, shattered glass. This is another photograph of the rear of her residence. There's the shed here behind her residence, a little metal shed. That's where we believe the cinder block that was thrown through the sliding glass door came from.
You discussed with him about the house and where it was located, and that's where he told you about why he called her Project Dog Site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And again, the aerial photograph of her property.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, once he gets up to the home, he's still stalking her. What does he see?
He sees that she's laying in bed. She's reading.